This is Ramik Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of what if Naruto left the village after Forbidden Scroll incident. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Imagine how the girl would be as a queen, wife, and mother. Naruto recalled his grandmother's advice to girls. Imagine living with her on a daily basis. And if you want this kind of life, follow your heart. He supposes they were correct. These questions had nothing to do with age or physique. Only if the girl's weight was so high that it caused health problems or prevented a mother from playing or watching her kids. Perhaps it was merely a matter of taste. Also, Rajija explained to the first girl, she should feel honored to help him. Frankly, asking a stranger for help is only not rude, either when it's important, like someone's life being in danger, or when it doesn't make any trouble for the person asked. You can easily ask someone for the time or for help if someone is at risk right then and there. But to demand from someone to spend their money on them and telling them they should feel honored about it, shows an arrogance of the size of the Eastern Mountains, Miyuki said. Naruto questioned, so being humble is better? Yes, was the response from everyone. Taking pity on him, Kazami explained, you see, Naruto. Sama, conceited people tend to ignore others and only think about themselves. They also tend to have what are known as double standards, which means that they have a few rules and expectations for themselves, if any, and a lot more for others. They tend to hold onto their opinions regardless of how often or how much they have been proven incorrect. It's also not uncommon for them to blame their own mistakes on others. Living with people who set rules for you, don't even follow them, and you can't argue with them because they're always right can quickly become frustrating. Frequently, it's even impossible to live up to their expectations of others. Being considerate of others makes it much easier to coexist. It should go without saying that double standards are detrimental to any long-term relationship. On the other hand, a humble person listens to and considers what others have to say. This allows you to make concessions, and the other person will also try to avoid causing you too much trouble if it can be avoided. This made a lot of sense. It sounded dreadfully similar to first-hand knowledge. It's time to switch the subject, or rather, return to it. I suppose so. Well, what else? I guess looking at other girls while on a date is a bad idea too, right? I wouldn't like it either if the girl stared at other boys. It's also against that, pay attention to the girl, tip. Naruto remarked. Very true. It's not really that big a deal in Diamond, since the women are already used to sharing a man. But in any place, where women don't share husbands, it's a very big deal. Still, when you promised a girl to spend time with her, like on a date, you should spend this time only thinking of the girl, and not mentally stripping every girl you happen to pass. Sometimes a woman can get jealous even here, and those issues are rather difficult to deal with, replied Miyuki. I found it incredibly rude that Rajija made one of the girls pay for everything. He basically played in that casino with another's money, said Rika. I don't think that the guy has to pay for everything either, but throwing, or in this case gambling, away other people's cash is far beyond the pale. Then again, gambling isn't very sexy in the first place. Luck can change quickly. Developed skills on the other hand are reliable. So would a girl like it if I pay for her and give her presents? It's not necessary the money or the items themselves, Naruto, Sama. But as far as I know, all girls like getting spoiled. If you give a girl attention, presents or think about her, it all means the same. That she is very important to you. That's why girls like presents. They can look at something and know their boy thought of them, even when he was away. However, if you only give presents, but neither attention nor thought, it may look like you want to buy the girl. If a present is just a reminder that the boy has money, but not that he paid attention to what the girl likes or that he would think of her, it can go rather wrong. Most girls don't want to be bought, since that would make them little more than prostitutes, stated Maya. But a girl isn't a whore just because she receives presents, and I don't want anyone to think that I think that either, Naruto grumbled. Don't worry, Naruto. Sama. It's really simple actually. As long as you spend enough time with a girl and make an effort for her, nobody will believe you want to buy her, Kaji said. Just to make sure. How much is enough? Because my teachers kind of take that away. Or I could use Kage Bushin. I don't think that's such a great idea. The girl probably wants to spend time with the real you. But you could use Kage Bushin for your teachers. Well, I guess you already do. Anyway, enough time depends on your actual free time. If you prefer to spend that time with more hobbies than one could count, rather than to spend it with your girl, she can't be really important to you. But if you two spend time together when you're both free and plan other things, like your hobbies, around that, then your girl clearly takes the priority," replied a somewhat amused Mariko. "And what about being fashionable late? I thought you should be on time on a date," asked Naruto. "See, you already know more about girls than the author of this book," said Ayame. "Personally, I doubt any girl would still want to go on that date if the boy doesn't give a very good reason for being late. Maybe, but I found it far worse, how much Rajija took advantage of the girls. He took everything from others and didn't give them anything in return. Heck, he threw the girls out just after he had gotten all the sex he wanted. Also, he basically treated that one girl like a possession. He made every decision for her, even when she said she doesn't want something. He simply decided that the girl had to learn swimming, but instead of patiently teaching her, he flat out pushed her in the lake and didn't even try to make sure she was alright. For heaven's sake, she could have gotten a cramp from the sudden panic in exercise. Rajija just left her there. Irresponsibility. Thy name is Rajija, or the author's Jiraiya, right? If he actually considers such behavior normal." Rika was furious. "Does that mean a guy is supposed to be responsible and serious the entire time? Come on, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun." "I don't think so, Naruto. Sama. I believe you can have fun and joke around to your heart's content. But only when the time and place is right. That means during a difficult exam, for example, would be a bad time, but afterwards should be fine. And your jokes shouldn't put somebody in danger. In best case, everyone else can laugh along with you and doesn't have any downside from your fun. If a joke does some harm, the victim will probably not like it. And people, or women, with a good sense of fairness won't like it either. Unless the victim actually deserves it." Kyoko responded with a nervous smile. "Yeah, that's a relief." Naruto chuckled. According to Kyoko, most girls prefer a boy who is playful and humorous, but only when the mood isn't too bad. They also prefer cuddling and a tender, caring side of their boy. As long as it doesn't make them feel uncomfortable. These things add interest and fun to daily life and are far superior to a dull guy. Rajija, on the other hand, is already overburdened by his own problems. He even panicked when he had trouble swimming, despite the fact that he had previously thrown someone else in the lake carelessly. I still think of some men as being much more manly than most because, when you bring them a problem, they all just take care of it. For me, a true man is someone who is there when needed, and you already do that more than anything else, Naruto. Sama. You work so hard for your family and country. I'm confident that someone who is just trustworthy, like you, won't have any trouble getting girls to notice him, Kazami continued. The praise made Naruto flush, and he was appreciative. In addition to the compliment, I appreciate all of the advice you gave. When Tariko and Haruhi returned and diverted attention from him, he was even more appreciative. Even though this conversation was embarrassing, at least he would be prepared for his fiancées when they got there. He would do everything in his power to select his nation's future queens, for his family and Diamond, and perhaps, hopefully, his best would be sufficient for genuine love. Sayuri had been by the queen's side, supporting her whenever she could, for as long as she could remember. When they had lost Carrie, she was by her side. When the Kin clan inquired about a successor and she had refused, she was by her side. Each time, naturally, she will accompany her when Prince Naruto ascends to the throne. Nevertheless, goddammit, she refused to tolerate such brutality. When the queen read those bloody files, she was definitely not going to be there to support her, or, really, anywhere close to her. When the queen attempted to explain this nonsense to the council, she was even less inclined to support her. Sayuri had all of this on her mind as she was returning to Titan, and rather than providing a detailed report, she was still trying to think of something, anything at all, that would get her out of the room or the nation. In the end, the mission itself had been fairly simple. Her own temper and those disgusting villagers were the only things that came close to ruining it. Sayuri was a devoted ninja, though, and she couldn't allow some jerks to jeopardize her mission. In any case, Konoha would soon discover exactly who they had lost. Additionally, the queen might permit her to return and exact revenge. Unfortunately, this was not the time. She felt other people suddenly. Oh no, the whole mess really diverted her attention. If not, she would have discovered them long ago. She noticed a small carriage carrying roughly 20 samurais just over a bridge. They wore Whirlpool's crest. Oh, hold on a second. The prince was related to the Whirlpool daimyo, right? This was most likely the response to the note the queen must have sent them regarding Naruto. Sama. Her eyes were drawn to the Batosei by a red flash. Correct. Kenshin, the Batosei, was another son of the daimyo. He must also be Carrie's child, as he was the prince's uncle. In fact, didn't that make him another diamond heir? He certainly possessed the strength necessary to rule. He was, after all, one of the few Western ninjas who, even by Eastern standards, would be regarded as exceptionally strong. The Batosei could likely defeat every ninja in Diamond by a wide margin in a 1-on-1 duel using only swords. The queen is among them. She ought to try to learn a little bit about him, huh? Sayuri then went up to the traveling team. Evening, gentlemen. Are you on the way to Diamond? With the samurai not far behind, the Batosei instantly drew his sword and leapt between her and the carriage. Who are you and what do you want from us? Don't worry, I'm not here to fight. I'm Sayuri from Diamond and just finished a mission. Back home, I met young Prince Naruto. I suppose Queen Sari sent you a message about him, right? When did the daimyo exit the carriage? That caught his attention. Ah, so you know my grandson? He asked. Sadly, not personally. I only saw him once and he was asleep then. But I heard only good things about him. Also, I went to school with Carrie. Did she come too? Sadly, my wife died over 10 years ago. I'm sorry. Sayuri thought the ground was wobbling. She dared to hope that she would actually see her old friend again after Naruto. Sama appeared. She ought to have been more aware. She actually took a step back and held herself on a 3-point compass, hating herself for the signs of weakness, while trying to ignore the hot tears that once again ruined her makeup and her mood. Well, my condolences then, I guess. You know, when I saw that she had a child, I had hoped that she was still alive. Damn it. The queen probably assumes her daughter is alive too. And now it's like she died a second time. But if she was alive, why did she never came back? Sayuri didn't let on. Crystals aren't complaining. Thus, neither did she. Not at all. When I first met the woman who should become my wife, the poor girl had lost all her memories. The waves brought her directly to Iandril. Everyone considered it a sign of the gods, because no one else had ever survived our maelstroms. Rina was such a wonderful woman. My people quickly fell in love with her, just like I did. Rina? Sayuri inquired. What the hell was Rina? And hadn't they just discussed Carrie? My son actually came up with the name. She didn't know her real name after all and we couldn't truly call her, you there. She just laughed and agreed, saying that usually an adult choose the name for a child, with her it was the other way around. Rina. Carrie, right? Found it funny. Later on she often laughed about it, especially when she was thinking of names during her pregnancy, the daimyo said. Sayuri muttered, ah, I see. Then Carrie wasn't Kenshin. Sama's mother as well. Mother may not have been related to me by blood, but she was still my mother, not that it would be any of your business, said Kenshin. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Or her, I just thought about the line of succession in Diamond. That's all. Sayuri quickly clarified. The daimyo attempted to mitigate. Kenshin actually asked for a mother from a shooting star. So he was convinced that Rina was sent from the stars for him, and promptly decided that I had to marry her. Kenshin complained angrily, Father, that is hardly the time or place for this, besides I was 3. Will you ever give it a rest? No, I won't ever stop bringing this up, but I agree that this isn't the right time or place. Enough about us. You sneaked out of the palace and stayed up all night for your shooting star. Everyone was terrified. Tell me about my grandson Naruto, Sayuri-san. Where was he before? Why weren't we told about him? Is he a happy and healthy child? How did you find him? How is he? What about his character, friends, and hobbies? You must have heard something, shouldn't you? I heard he is really hardworking and kind, and as far as I know, he's happy and healthy. He was in Konoha before coming to Diamond. I actually was on a mission to get his files from there. Sayuri smiled. Really? How comes Konoha never saw fit to tell us about Naruto? Well, we better settle that with the Hokage. Anyway, about those files. I wish to see them, the daimyo replied. Oh. The Uzumaki temper was quite well known, and they would most likely blow up if she herself struggled to stop killing Konoha's people randomly. She didn't really want to be in the front row of that catastrophe, even though she felt Konoha had it coming. Oh no, she needed to come up with a reason, and quickly. I'm really sorry, Daimyo Sama, but my mission was to bring them to the queen directly. I don't want to explain to her why I had let them out of my sight or hand. But I'm sure the queen will let you read them anyway. I could tell you how he met the queen though. This was acceptable to the daimyo. After all, he would anticipate the same from his own people. Furthermore, he would eventually see the files. Listening to the tale of how his beloved grandson met his unidentified mother.in.law was sufficient until that point. Thus, they continued their journey while the samurai and Uzumakis paid close attention to Sayuri. She shared with them what the queen had told her. Not just about the initial encounter, but also about his instructors and guards. How his teachers concurred that they had never encountered a child so intelligent, imaginative, and vivacious. And how he already appeared to be at home in the palace. Sakura was having a great time. She was not only on the same team as her Sasuke-kun, but she was also at last a ninja. Every day, she could see him. More importantly, he was able to see her. Go ahead, Ino. There is no chance for you, neither does anybody else, really. She didn't even need to share Sasuke-kun with another teammate, which made it even better. Indeed, that Naruto idiot would be added to their team if he returned. However, that would never occur. By now, he was most likely dead. Naruto wasn't particularly noteworthy. He consistently finished last in spars, tests, and really everything. For heaven's sake, he couldn't even execute basic clone jutsu. That fool was simply too weak and foolish. Well, he would have most likely perished on his first expedition outside of Konoha anyhow. Sakura was certain that Naruto had passed away long ago. She would even wager her finest gown that he would be killed within 30 minutes of leaving the village. The Hunternans would have discovered him by now even if he had miraculously survived to that point. The fact that Nins were sent after a single orphan who was as weak, foolish, and simply irrelevant as that idiot Naruto initially perplexed Sakura. However, Iruka Sensei gave her class an explanation of the circumstances. Mizuki Sensei had apparently betrayed the village by using Naruto to obtain some dangerous jutsus and an important scroll. Naruto fled with the scroll, while Iruka Sensei battled the traitor. As a result, a remarkable number of Nins and even some Anbus went in pursuit of the scroll, and they would have brought the idiot back as well if they had stumbled upon him. Because he was innocent. Well, at least this time. The fact that they were specifically prohibited from fighting Naruto if they encountered him was the only thing that didn't really make sense. They were instructed to simply tell the fool that he could return and that they would have to leave him alone and report the entire incident if he didn't believe them. What were the higher-ups thinking? Really, Naruto wasn't particularly dangerous. He was, after all, the most incompetent, awkward, noisy, and worthless student in the entire academy. Basically the antithesis of any serious, authentic ninja. He could probably be beaten by a first year. Never mind Sasuke-kun, who is so awesome. Since their first spar, he had done so in each and every one of them. Sakura could easily defeat Naruto because she had already defeated him innumerable times. Like when Sasuke-kun or that Naruto idiot was bugging her. Naruto wouldn't even benefit from the scroll. The fool wouldn't comprehend a word of the scroll because it was probably written for Anbus or Jonins. After all, the schoolbooks were written for children, and Naruto didn't even understand them. He was always the last to master a jutsu. He couldn't even perform a basic clone. Sakura was certain that Naruto would never be significant. Hell, he would never amount to anything at all, as everyone knew. Well, perhaps not including Hinata Hyuga. However, Hinata herself was a failure. Furthermore, she was unable to recognize Sasuke-kun for the amazing man he was. In that sense, she was simply blind. My ass, Byakugan, the all-seeing eyes. Naruto was exposed as an idiot by everyone else. It's not as if a Byakugan was required. Well, she didn't have that issue. She was able to spot a good catch. She would get her man, too. Even though their foolish sensei Kakashi was incredibly useless. In addition to being consistently hours late, Kakashi Sensei read, Icha Icha, books, ignored her and Sasuke-kun during their D-rank missions, provided no assistance whatsoever during those missions, and, most importantly, actually expected her to get filthy and sweaty in front of Sasuke-kun. Simply put, some people were unaware of what was most crucial. Sakura had to look good because she was on the same team as Sasuke-kun, which was an advantage. She simply couldn't ruin her chances with him by being filthy, with paint stains, or, heaven forbid, sweaty, because he would eventually notice her as a girl. Sakura was unfortunately forced to miss the missions thus far because of this. Since she couldn't assist and Kakashi Sensei was too indolent, Sasuke-kun was left to do all the work. Sakura, however, made sure to constantly commend him for his diligence, in contrast to Kakashi Sensei. Thankfully, Sasuke-kun was so amazing that he completed the task with ease. On his own, he could likely complete even a B-rank mission. For example, guarding a caravan. However, the missions that Kakashi Sensei was giving them were nothing more than a farce. Missions, like painting a fence or pulling weeds from a garden, were simply tasks. No one should expect or even permit a young woman to weed and ruin her clothes with grass stains. Furthermore, these kinds of missions completely squandered Sasuke-kun's talent. Regardless of the clan head, they were obviously inferior to any Uchiha. True, Sasuke-kun was automatically in charge of the clan because there were no other Uchihas left. However, that was a small and unimportant detail. The fact that Sasuke-kun was the leader of the Uchiha clan was crucial. An extraordinarily wealthy clan that had given birth to some of the most formidable ninjas in history. Sasuke-kun would undoubtedly rise to the top of their generation's ninja rankings as well. And any child who had him as a father would inevitably grow up to be awesome too. Sakura was already aware of it. Her life as Sasuke-kun's wife. Given how frequently she had dreamed about it. At every gala, she would shine on Sasuke-kun's arms. As the wife of the clan head of such a powerful clan, it was her responsibility. In any battle, she would outshine every other woman, just as her future husband would outshine every other ninja. To bring the clan back together, she would have his children. The kids who were destined to be extraordinary. Sakura was eager to force the accomplishments of her future children on those other girls. No one would ever again dare to mock her. Rather, she would be among the most well-liked individuals in the entire Fire Nation. Sakura would have maids waiting on her every step of the way and money to buy anything that caught her eye, so she could unwind during her pregnancy or look fantastic at her events. She and Sasuke-kun's children could be looked after by those maids as well. It was flawless. Sasuke-kun hasn't shown any interest in girls yet, so that was the only issue. In fact, his shyness was kind of adorable. She had a bright future. She was impatient. If only Sasuke-kun would move on and ask her out at last. She still had the time of her life in spite of the few minor issues. True love always prevails, and her mother was correct. Say Akiko-chan, is it true that our class next year will get a certain edition? Akane inquired. Yes, the prince. Grandma said he would be in the A class. Great. With almost every girl after him, we won't get a single peaceful recess in the entire term, Kimiko said. Huh? Kimiko-chan, don't you want the prince? I mean, we could actually become princesses and even queens in time. Wouldn't that be really cool? Akane asked in disbelief. Cool? Competing with pretty much everyone to gain a boy's attention without even knowing him? What if he's some spoiled brat that can't even bath himself without aid? Or an arrogant prick that believes he owns the world? Even if the prince is boyfriend material and we get his love, which is far from likely, we would have to follow protocols for the rest of our life. Having to deal with politicians and nobles on a daily basis. And we'd have to be behaved every single god damned day. Seriously, it'll be a cold day in hell when I try to get the prince. It'll be more than irritating enough when all the girls chasing him come to our room every fucking recess, replied Kimiko, irritated. Akiko mentioned, actually, we will most likely not be in a class this term. What do you mean? Insisted Akane. Well, other countries will send girls to our school too. I haven't heard the exact number, but well, Grandma asked a lot of retired teachers back and hired new ones as well. Most of these foreign girls will be our age and will basically just attend because of him. I bet the queen will remove most of Class A to other classes and put her favorites there instead. We may not even be in the same class next term, Akiko said. Personally, I hope I'll be in a different class than the prince. Otherwise it'll be hard to learn anything. Come now, Kimiko. Chan. I'm sure it won't be so bad. The teachers will put a stop to anything too disruptive anyway, Akiko said. I'll give you that, Akiko. Chan. They'll probably try. However, the teachers will face significant challenges as long as the majority of students' objectives have nothing to do with their studies. With the majority of students talking, those who do want to learn won't even hear the teacher. What can a teacher do if everyone starts talking? They can't exactly send the entire class outside. Detention won't help either, as most will think it's a small price for a conversation with the prince. As for giving out poor grades, it won't help either, because no one will care about them in the first place. Kimiko frowned and predicted, the teachers will not have the opportunity to discipline unruly students unless the prince or queen makes good behavior or grades a requirement for any relationship with the prince. I don't think so, to be honest. Actually, I want to become one of the prince's wives too. But I don't plan to ignore my studies for this. Grandma would kill me. And I'm sure others will feel the same, replied Akiko. Akane questioned, really? You want to marry a stranger? Well, I'll get to know the prince before, and if I don't like him, I'll stop flirting. No big deal. Better you than me. Do you want us to help you, Akiko-chan? Akiko practically jumped with joy when she said, that would be great, Kimiko-chan. With your brain and Akane-chan's knowledge about beauty, I'm sure we can make the prince fall in love with me. Akane asked, so, what would you advise our future queen, Kimiko-chan? At first you should probably try to get allies and any information on the prince you can get. Good allies will help a lot, and information is necessary to find out what the prince finds attractive. Maybe you should try to get someone from the Mojimi clan. Moriko-chan is in our year, she'll probably get into the prince's class. She'll surely make a good ally. But it'll be hard to convince her to help us. Or anyone from that clan. They do believe in letting their children choose for themselves after all, Kimiko said. If that's the case, wouldn't Kuraiko-san from the Kin clan be better? Akane responded. Hell no. You should never make an alliance with anyone from the Kin clan. People tend to die when the Kin clan considers them opponents. Or even allies, who aren't useful anymore, warned Kimiko. Seriously? But wouldn't they get caught if it really was foul play? Akane questioned. I believe Kimiko-chan is correct. You know Akira-chan from the Fushigi clan? Her clan was once as large as the Mojimi clan, and when the queen's daughter disappeared, most people even believed they would take the throne after her death. Others thought the Kin clan would be the next royal line. Oddly, the death rate for Fushigi clan members increased right after the queen's daughter was declared dead, with the majority of them dying on missions in remote areas with a Kin clan member nearby. Akiko clarified, you can't trust anyone from the Kin clan. It's a really small clan by now. I think only 4 or 5 people are still alive from the entire family. So what? We can't trust anyone from the Kin clan. The Fushigi clan is unlikely to trust anybody by now, and from the Mojimi clan nobody will help us. Man, that sucks, Akane said. Kimiko responded, without trust, no alliance, welcome to politics. We can still try. Akira-chan is very bright, I'm sure she'll try to make alliances herself, Akane replied. These three, along with numerous others in other places, kept talking about potential alliances, and even some that weren't, only in anticipation of Prince Naruto. In the palace with the aforementioned Prince Naruto was so ecstatic that he could hardly contain his excitement. He had heard from Gran that they would be eating ramen. It seems that his grandmother Carrie also adored it. The sweet scent was already filling his nostrils. Naruto was certain that he would actually taste a bit of heaven because the regular meals here tasted so good. He should not have to wait so long, if only. Naruto was certain that nothing could possibly take his mind off of this wonderful scent or this annoying wait. Until Naruto heard the most unbelievable and impossible question from one of his guards. What is ramen? What? How can you not know what ramen is, Haruhi-chan? I'm so sorry, Naruto. Sama. It's just the only thing I know about it is that ramen is some sort of soup, replied the quiet man. With tears in his eyes, Naruto questioned, do you mean you never had tasted any ramen? No, I don't think so. Actually, Haruhi had never consumed even a spoonful of ramen before. That tragedy was so unimaginable and cruel. To consider what kind, timid Haruhi was losing out on. Furthermore, she was unaware that she was missing it. There was no other option but for Naruto to assist her. If he made such a sweet girl go without the greatest food ever for even one more day, he couldn't bear it. In order to allow Haruhi to taste the food of the gods, Naruto sacrificed his own ramen. At least the first serving. Surprisingly, only his Gigi was against it. Indeed, serving any of his food to a guard likely violated more than a dozen protocol guidelines. Still, it was a significant issue. Additionally, his Gigi wasn't usually all that concerned with protocol or rules. Gran was typically the one who insisted on observing enough regulations to make a practical joke unfun. However, it appeared as though they had switched sides this time. Gran won the argument, as usual, and that was the only thing that truly changed. Which, for once, was good. Haruhi wouldn't have ramen otherwise. Haruhi learned, that's really good. After grinning at her, Naruto tucked himself into his own bowl, which was meant to be his second. He had been correct. This ramen was like a tiny bit of heaven, even better than Ichiraku's. Naruto and his guards returned to the training room after the best meal he had in the palace. He was able to spend more time attempting to learn another jutsu from the Forbidden Scroll because he had no schoolwork to complete today. He was only a quarter of the way through the scroll and had already learned a little more than 30 jutsus. The following one also sounded quite impressive. Before long, a lighting dragon sped across the room. Naruto stood tall and proud, as tall as he could be, and created another lightning dragon while his guards watched in wonder. This one is even quicker than the previous one. Every one of his guards was quite impressed. They all had comparable jutsus, it's true, but to learn such a massive one at his age and in a matter of hours is astounding. There was more to that. There was only one guard who didn't give the dragon much attention. Haruhi's thoughts about the prince were surprisingly filthy. She had to take action because she simply couldn't stop herself. However, she wishes she could keep herself and him apart from the other guards. However, that was incorrect. She should never consider it. There had to be more than one person protecting the prince. However, what they could do behind closed doors. The prince was always so gentlemanly, which would undoubtedly carry over into more private affairs as well. No, the prince was only 12 years old. That was just completely incorrect. However, he was already fairly mature, so that must have been a factor. No, if she exploited Naruto Sama, she would be put to death, and for good reason. However, he looked amazing at the moment. Sweating a little and breathing a little heavily, he didn't appear to be going to get tired anytime soon. If they did, would he really become tired? Or wouldn't he even perspire? In heaven's name, what had gone wrong with her? Before she raped the prince, she really needed to stop thinking about this? Haruhi-chan? Are you alright? Haruhi quickly clarified, I'm so sorry, Naruto. Sama. I'm just distracted. That's all. Naruto said, you sure? I could take care of you if you're not feeling so hot. No, I'm very hot. I'm fine. Huh? Your nosebleeds? Nosebleeds out of nowhere can't be all that healthy. Come on, we'll go to Hideko Sensei and let her have a long, hard look at you. Luckily, the route was fairly short and the doctor was only 2 floors above them. This was actually a good thing because Haruhi's morals, thoughts, and self-control were all deteriorating. Naruto and the other guards waited outside. Only one was permitted to remain with Haruhi, and she wisely decided to choose Ayame over Naruto. The doctor emerged after a brief pause, clearly agitated. Ayame, however, appeared poised to blow up. Haruhi Makani.san is asleep now and will be completely fine by tomorrow. However, I need to run a test with you and your other guards, Naruto Sama. To make sure you don't suffer from the same thing. I only need a blood sample of each one. If you all would come in, please. Naruto worriedly questioned, is Haruhi-chan's sickness that contagious, sensei? It's not exactly contagious. But, Ayame raged, Haruhi. Chan was drugged. What? How? When? Yelled Miyuki out. Unfortunately, we don't know this yet. The drug used wasn't really dangerous, it's more like a very effective aphrodisiac. So I doubt that anyone is in danger. Besides, the drug has to be digested and doesn't cause an immediate reaction. Still, I will bring this before the queen personally as soon as I'm sure no one else was drugged, quickly stated. Naruto inquired, what's an aphrodisiac? Well, it makes a person rather willing. Well, in this case it's a very strong one, so whoever ate it is likely kind of desperate. For well, sex. A doctor with a red face attempted to clarify. Why would anyone give something like this to Haruhi-chan? I don't know. It may even have been meant for someone else. But since we usually eat meals together, if one of us was drugged, it's possible that everyone else was too, Kazami said. We should get this over with. Ayame-chan, were you already tested? Maya replied. Yes. I'm clean. Okay. Then you go to the queen and report what's going on and request some reinforcement. We don't know how many of us got drugged too, and I don't want the prince without protection. Some of us may even got worse drugs than Haruhi-chan. Maya nodded quickly, and Ayame was relieved that she took charge and walked away. She needed reinforcements and to tell the queen about the situation. Hideko. Sensei. Please test Naruto. Sama first. If somebody could drug one of us, they may even got the prince. Girls, get in line for our test. The strongest fighters first. Personally, I think, if Miyuki-chan would try something with Naruto. Sama, I could probably stop her by myself. But if it were Rika-chan, well, it would probably best to sedate her, before she would be affected by any drug. Thankfully Ayame-chan is already cleared. That's one fight I'd rather not think about. Maya's plan was accepted by all, and Naruto finished his test without delay. Kazami, Kyoko, Miyuki, Rika, Maya, Kaji, Tariko, Mariko, and Kazami were also present. Except for Haruhi, everyone was alright. Although Naruto was quite relieved, he was also perplexed. Since the guards always ate meals together, why wasn't anyone else drugged if one was? The same foods that Haruhi-chan ate must have been consumed by someone else. His Gran's arrival diverted his attention, and what she means by some reinforcement, it appears that she views some reinforcement similarly to a little shopping, Naruto thought, turning to face the guards in their 50s. Gran turned Naruto around to get a full view of him. Naruto, are you alright? You're not hurt or drugged, right? She asked. Gazing at the back of his head, she seemed to be able to detect any drug in him. Well, whatever. Before Gran had the brilliant idea to strip him naked in front of everyone, Naruto clarified, I'm fine Gran. Really, Hideko? Sensei already checked me. The only one hurt was Haruhi-chan. Calm down, sorry. Chan. It's probably nothing. How can you say it's nothing? Someone drugged at least one of Naruto's guards. Probably far more. If someone wants to attack him, they would of course try to get his guards out of the way first. This may well be an attack on Naruto, and I for one will not allow this, the queen screamed. I'm sure there was no bad intention behind this. Nobody got hurt, right? So it was probably just a little prank that ended wrong. Please, don't make this into anything bigger than it actually is. Sure told his spouse. No bad intention. Haruhi-chan is out cold. She must be badly hurt by whatever it is. And a drug is never just a prank. It's a crime, for heaven's sake. And maybe all of Naruto's guards were drugged and will be out within a few minutes. Naruto interrupted, saying, Haruhi-chan was the only one who actually got drugged. With a very red face, Hideko Sensei clarified, and the drug used was a strong aphrodisiac, so Haruhi-san is not exactly hurt. The greatest risk was that she would wind up trying to, well, take liberties with Prince Naruto. Queen Sari simply gazed at the physician. Simply put, it was incomprehensible, timid, adorable Haruhi-chan. Might have raped Naruto. Yes, it hadn't occurred. However, that anyone could claim that it might have occurred. The queen wasn't sure if she should laugh or cry. See, I told it wasn't anything serious. Someone probably just wanted Haruhi-chan to loosen up a bit. Sure. Are you out of your mind? Even if that was the only reason, it still is a crime. I can't just ignore somebody who goes around drugging other people, especially if those people happen to hang out with my heir. Watching in confusion as his great-grandparents quarreled was Naruto. It was illogical. Why did Gigi maintain that nothing negative occurred? Perhaps he disliked Haruhi-chan? He was adamantly opposed to Naruto sharing his ramen with her, after all. However, he only allowed her to win at cards yesterday, so it's not like Gigi detested her, is it? Hold on. After eating his ramen, Haruhi had eaten nothing but that and no other guard. No other guard was drugged because of this. His ramen contained the drug. Whoever placed this stuff there had intended for him to consume it, wished for him to be hungry. Gran assured him that his genes would be sought after by others, but this was crazy. Gigi also wanted to call the entire situation a prank. He seemed to want whoever did this to escape punishment for harming Haruhi-chan. Hold on, Gigi wanted Naruto to eat his ramen and refrain from giving his guards anything. However, it couldn't be. He would never be drugged by his Gigi, would he? After all, he was family. He had been saved, right? The Hokage wasn't like him. Merely acting as though you care about him. Gran and Gigi continued to quarrel, but they were now more subdued. All Naruto wanted to do was gaze at his great-grandfather, to determine whether, well, Naruto wasn't entirely sure how exactly watching Gigi could provide him with any answers. However, he needed to take action. Naruto grew closer to his family as a result. In order to allow the royal family to privately reassure the young prince, the guards, Gran brought in as reinforcement, stayed behind. He was followed only by Ayame-chan, but that was okay too. After all, they were friends. Prior to Naruto's family seeing him, he had heard that his grandmother was actually more irate than usual, rather than more at ease. She whispered to Gigi using a rather colorful vocabulary, as if she were about to throttle him. You really went too far this time, you miserable, dirty bastard. I should put you in prison, for fuck's sake. If anybody else would have tried this, they would get executed. Hell, I have half a mind to execute you right here and now. What the bloody hell were you thinking? Just as irate, Gigi whispered back, you know as well as I, that Naruto needs a little encouragement to get some fun with the fairer sex. I'm just trying to help him. That can't be a crime. Yes, it is a crime if your help led someone to the hospital. Haruhi-chan could have raped him. That wouldn't exactly be all that helpful in getting him interested in girls. Damn it, Sure, he is 12. He doesn't need help. And he sure as hell doesn't need drugs. All he needs is time. Naruto just hadn't hit puberty yet. By the time he is 16, he'll probably have banged already more girls than you have peeped at in your whole life. As long as you don't traumatize him so much that he can't even look at a girl without running away screaming. The desire to drug him was actually Gigi's. He resembled the Hokage exactly. Deceiving, controlling, and showing no genuine concern for him. Naruto was unable to have faith in his own family. Most likely, no one could be trusted. Ironically, there were no tears. Not even sadness or rage. It was simply the same as before. Just like it had always been. The sole distinction was that Naruto was aware that everyone else would attempt to take advantage of him this time. That was all. He would need to exercise caution. Would need to be aware of everything. So that he would never again be caught off guard by something like this. Even without the tears, or perhaps because they were absent, Ayame witnessed the prince's internal breakdown. It was difficult for her not to beat the sly bastard until she was completely exhausted. And in this case, she wasn't even the one who was harmed. All that shit was the king's and queen's fault. For Prince Naruto's broken heart, for the fear that all the guards felt, and for little Haruhi-chan in the hospital. Fear of failing the mission, of dying from a drug overdose, of losing the prince and, by now, a close friend. That couldn't be forgiven. The queen may have ordered Ayame to become Naruto-sama's guard. But because the prince was so amazing, she was also his friend, and that wasn't by order. Constantly supportive, always giving his all, and a lot of fun to be around. Although she was unsure of the other people's decision, Ayame had already made up her mind. She would be there for Naruto-sama, always, even in opposition to the king and queen. Teaching always seemed like fun to Kurenai. Hanging out with some adorable young children. Naive eyes gazing in wonder at her. Observing and assisting them in growing stronger. Anko further cautioned her that brats usually don't listen. Mostly they either are trouble or get in trouble. The really talented ones manage both on a daily basis. Kurenai was confident that she could manage 3 young children, though, for crying out loud, she was a Jonin. She had been confident that she would be respected based only on her rank. Additionally, the promise of strength would ensure that even the most unruly children would follow her instructions. Kurenai was almost ready to brag when she was told which team she was supposed to instruct. All clan heirs, each with great potential and strength in their own right. Kiba would likely be a little rash like any other Inuzuka, but with an Aburame and a Hyuga nearby, the boy would learn to control himself. And she could envision herself with a fantastic team in the near future based on the feedback from all of her young students. About 3 minutes into their first encounter, Kurenai was still daydreaming. Then she became acutely aware of her mistake. None of them took much notice of her Jonin rank. She was unable to blame them for it. The majority of them could clean the floor with her every day of the week, and all of their parents held that rank. She was not regarded as significant by any of her students. Kurenai was unable to even present them with the carrot of training or techniques. For those, the children would first turn to their own clan. Which was understandable given that Kurenai's own skills weren't much use. Unfortunately, Kurenai's weakness was taijutsu, which Kiba and Hinata concentrated on. Shino mostly used his insects and strategy. Since insects were clan-based and Kurenai knew very little about them, she was also unable to assist there. In fact, she could contribute somewhat to strategy, but not much, and Kurenai didn't initially know enough about insects to include them in strategies. In addition, Shino was the only pupil who didn't require restraint. Genjutsu was her strongest suit. Furthermore, it would never function on a Byakugan. On Shino's insects, it probably wouldn't work either. Additionally, Kiba and Akamaru were able to detect scents. The smell would be different, so they would know right away if she were to put them in a genjutsu. Kurenai had no idea how keen a dog or Inuzuka's sense of smell was, no matter how skilled she was. Everything would smell as it usually does for Kurenai, which is probably different from what Kiba and Akamaru are accustomed to, if she placed them under a genjutsu. In other words, her students would not benefit from her strongest point. Kurenai was limited to observing her students, and everything else was problematic, even though their skills were promising. On the first day, Kiba was certain he was prepared for a B-rank mission. Shino could barely tolerate his emotional teammates because he was so rational and reasonable. On her own, Hinata was like a constant S rank. Kurenai also suspected that she would perform worse than she had on her previous real S rank. According to the Academy's reports, Hinata was quiet but kind and obedient. Considerate and helpful to others, but easily demoralized. It sounded sufficiently innocent. In actuality, she was not kind, helpful, or considerate. Nor was Hinata a shy person. More like reserved and quiet. However, Kurenai had to somewhat concur with the final 2 points. Hinata had a different idea of what obedience meant. In theory, she followed instructions exactly. For others, she was the epitome of discouragement. Hinata didn't speak to her teammates or Kurenai. She didn't say anything, give any advice, or offer assistance. Hinata failed to even welcome them. She didn't say anything at all. She either did nothing on D-rank missions or did something unrelated to them. Kiba and Shino were either ignored or glared at when they asked, suggested, or demanded that Hinata do something for their mission. Kurenai, for his part, couldn't decide which was worse. Her scowls were very frightening. Hinata made sure Kurenai suffered whenever he gave her instructions to participate in the current mission. Kurenai assumed Hinata was simply timid and unsure of what to do on the first mission. Kurenai instructed her to remove the trash because they needed to clean the house. Hinata walked out without saying anything, grabbed the trash can, stumbled, and fell on top of her shocked sensei while carrying all the trash. Naturally, everything that was in the bin ended up on Kurenai or the floor. Ultimately, Kurenai wasn't clean, but the house was. Kurenai gave her instructions to play with the dogs by throwing a ball during another mission where they had to walk dogs. After a few minutes, Hinata threw the ball into Kurenai's backpack. As expected, the dogs immediately jumped after it, which meant they were on her back, and ruined everything in their path, including Kurenai's hair, purse, provision, and backpack. Hinata replaced the paint with a different color and painted her entire team, including herself, on a D-rank painting offense. For the remainder of the day, they all left orange hand and footprints. She chased the cat into the Hokage Tower of all things when they had to capture Tora, and Hinata's role was to chase the cat into a building to facilitate the capture mission. Her group, the Hokage's office and hat, and the Hokage himself all appeared to be survivors of a previous global conflict. Kurenai asked her to tend to the front garden while she was weeding a garden. Kurenai believed she was very clear when she gave instructions to remove anything that wasn't a flower, and Hinata was unable to do this in any other way than the one she was expected to do for once. Kurenai ought to have realized better by now. The ground beneath her collapsed as she went to see how her troublesome student was doing. In just a few minutes, the girl was able to take down the apple tree and conceal the hole in the ground sufficiently for Kurenai to overlook the warning signs. But it wasn't just weeds in the apple tree that were absent. Additionally gone were the mailbox, bed framing, stone path, fence, and bird watering area. That had been hard to explain, particularly the hole in the ground and the missing apple tree. All Kurenai wanted was for Hinata to stop playing tricks on everyone and sabotaging them. She had tried everything by now. Bribery, punishments, hard.to, heart conversations, stern conversation, yelling, reasoning, bringing in others, from her teammates, over her family, to Amino, Inoichi, and even Hokage. Sama, bribery, and on one particularly awkward occasion, begging. Kurenai was unable to reach the girl no matter what she tried. It appeared that no one could. So far, her teammates have not fared any better. Both appeared to agree to support Hinata when she needed it and to let her deal with her issues on her own. As of right now, Kurenai had no team. Instead, she had one major mess and two students who were constantly at odds. She had even received an unsettling response when she asked the Hyuga clan for assistance. In reality, Hiyashi Sama had acknowledged that his daughter was worse at home. Even the thought of it made Kurenai shudder. He had explained to her the cause of Hinata's abrupt transformation and that it would probably only be resolved if Uzumaki came back alive and in a reasonably good state. Kurenai made the decision to bring in the big guns after this. She even went so far as to ask her friend Anko to join her for dinner. It's true that many people believe it was excessive to sink someone from TI on an unruly genin. However, as long as it was successful, who gave a damn? They discussed her little problem. Student in a calm manner at first. Anko thought the entire concept was hilarious. A genin playing hell and back with her jonin. Sensei. She even saw the fiasco as a positive development, stating that her pupil was clearly skilled at strategy. Anko wasn't entirely sure she was needed. She believed Kurenai was teaching for the first time and only needed assistance because she lacked teaching experience. That's what Anko told her friend, but she was also willing to assist. That is, until Kurenai revealed the name of her present headache to her. Her response was even more unsettling than Hiyashi Sama's response. At the name of a mere genin, Anko Mitarashi, a member of Konoha's torture and interrogation force and a former student of Orochimaru, was now pale at an alarming rate and her eyes were wider than saucers. She had fought Orochimaru without hesitation even though she knew she would die. Kurenai didn't find it funny at all, for some reason. Anko barely had time to offer an explanation, she essentially just ran. She even threw her wallet at the table to pay, forgetting that Kurenai had invited her. She simply left a month's salary for one meal, and she didn't give a shit. All Kurenai could do was stare in disbelief and despair. A shiver went down her spine. It reminded her horribly of how she felt on a mission, right before chaos broke out. Only once, away from missions, had she experienced this specific chill. And the attack by the Kyuubi took place on that day. The words of Hiyashi Sama suddenly reverberated in her mind. I must apologize for my daughter's behavior. She had a lot of compassion in general, but even more so for Uzumaki-san specifically. She feels betrayed by the village as a whole on his behalf. Hinata learned about the Third's Law and, although she doesn't mind Uzumaki-san's secret, she took issue with the way everyone else handled it. We taught her that ignoring a problem didn't make it go away, and the Academy's teachers agreed, but ultimately, we are all guilty of this exact behavior when it comes to young Uzumaki-san. Though partly due to practical considerations, our clan is known worldwide for its ability to control chakras and to see them. We should have been able to tell the difference between the boy and the chakra, which is something we can actually see. The two chakras actually look very different. We could have also offered our assistance to young Uzumaki-san, and unlike other villages, we could have easily taught him to use chakra without posing any threat to ourselves. This is why our clan actually drew her ire more than others. No matter how we feel, we really ought to have made that offer. It would have been much safer if someone with Byakugan had made sure Uzumaki-san wouldn't use his other chakra, so we just let him try. Later, we could have made sure he wouldn't lose control if or when he tried to use his other chakra. I regret not making that offer, if only because it would have prevented some sleepless nights for everyone, including myself. But I'm getting off topic. As for Hinata, I'm afraid she won't stop her unacceptable behavior until Uzumaki-san returns to her life and is at least minimally healthy. She might also feel that he must be seen as a significant person or that he must forgive Konoha before Hinata can forgive him. I'm not sure how much the last two can be avoided, but they would undoubtedly help to lessen Hinata's rage. Even without those adjustments, though, she would at least concentrate more on Uzumaki-san than her guerrilla war. However, if Uzumaki-san doesn't return healthily or doesn't return at all, we will have to remove Hinata from Konoha's forces. To be honest, Kurenai hadn't given the missing Jinchuriki much thought. Like many others, she thought the boy was already dead. He must have been discovered and killed by an animal or by one of the earliest hunters, and then just threw the body away. Kurenai did not feel sad or relieved that the boys had assumed death. Concerned a little about the missing scroll, and much more concerned about Hinata's actions. She was certain that the boy couldn't break the seal, even if he wanted to, and she trusted the fourth Hokage and his seal on Naruto. Therefore, in her view, the Kyuubi would never have been a problem. Furthermore, the records show that the Uzumaki boy himself was not strong at all. He wouldn't pose a threat by himself, surely. In contrast to Hinata, who was apparently capable of surprising a Jonin, while strictly adhering to said Jonin's directives, without ever leaving behind any indication of malevolent intent. Not to mention how disrespectful and uncooperative she is. Hinata was furious with every single person in Konoha, and somehow succeeded in frightening even the torture and interrogation force personnel. She was obviously vulnerable to treason. Kurenai simply could not rely on Hinata. In Konoha, no one could. All other sounds were muffled by the ringing of the trumpets in Naruto's ears. Attendants and guards stood alert. The throne room was flanked by at least 50 guards and about 200 more. The entire space glistened. Even the trash cans and walls. Really, did someone cover every available surface with glitter? Of course, everyone was attempting to win over Uzu's daimyo and his family. Most of them wished to see Carrie once more. Still, though, that was way too much, and much too feminine. At least he wasn't covered in pink glitter. Before, Naruto had been ecstatic about the arrival of his grandfather and uncle, but now he questioned whether he could truly trust them. He understandably questioned whether they truly cared after the Hokage kept such secrets and his Gigi attempted to drug him. Particularly since they didn't seem to search for him. At least Gigi and Gra were unaware of his existence. The other Uzumakis, however, had to be aware of his mother, ought to have realized Kushina was expecting, and his own last name ought to have made him easy to locate. He would, after all, discover what his surviving relatives desired from him. As the door opened and the visitors were led inside, everyone turned to face them. Naruto recognized his family right away. In the middle of a protective circle was an elderly man wearing a blue kimono and a white coat, with long white hair and a beard. His grandfather, Genryusai Uzumaki, the daimyo of Uzu, must be that person. A younger man with bright red hair and an X-shaped scar on his face was standing next to him. He had on a white coat and a red kimono. Some samurai were protecting them. The daimyo looked inquisitively at the queen, then at the king, and finally at Naruto. Genryusai's eyes widened with emotion as he saw his grandson for the first time, recalling his beloved daughter and her husband. Despite having his father's hair and eyes, Naruto resembled Kushina so much that the daimyo found it difficult to breathe. Of course, he had a couple pictures of the queen's letter. Nothing had prepared the old man to see the expression in his grandson's eyes, though, and those were mainly from a distance. The pride and inner fire of Kushina were evident in Naruto's eyes. but also Minato's cool confidence and calculating curiosity. His grandson must have wondered how strong they were all. Like his parents, he already knew Naruto would be fair, strong, and kind. His face lit up at the thought. Like his father, Kenshin was at a loss, and was also reminded of Kushina, his sister. In actuality, however, he disregarded any likeness between Naruto and Minato Namikaze. In his opinion, Naruto's father didn't matter. Had it not been for the queen's cough, Kenshin most likely would have continued to stare at Naruto for another week. Fortunately, his father appeared too enthralled to move anytime soon. Queen of Diamond, I would like to thank you for your invitation. We are honored to be in your esteemed home. It is my pleasure, young man. Please make yourself comfortable. I hope your journey wasn't too demanding. Thank you, my lady. Our journey was quite good, especially since we had one of yours to keep us company. But maybe a little introduction is in order? Ah, right. May I introduce my husband, the King of Diamond, Sure Shira, and my great-grandson Naruto Uzumaki. It is a pleasure meeting you. The daimyo will then, more or less, regain consciousness. Oh, for crying out loud. We are all family, even if we didn't know about it beforehand. There is really no point to be so formally, Kenshin. As for my lovely mother.in.law, I would like to apologize for not asking for my wife's hand properly, but I didn't know she still had family. Much less where they were. Father. We are still in front of the leader of a foreign country. 1. We had never met before. We should talk with them properly. Actually, I too would like to skip the formalities. So, I guess you can call me sorry. Though, mother.in.law is perfectly fine as well. Then I suppose you can call me Sure or father.in.law. And Naruto was already introduced. So, what's your name, son? I'm Genryu Sai and this is my son Kenshin. Kenshin nodded to the queen, barely fighting the urge to sigh. Sari inquired hopefully, your son? Does that mean young Kenshin is our grandson? Well, to be honest, we had hit this issue during our travel with Sayuri.san. Kenshin was raised by Rina-chan. But he is from my first marriage and therefore not related by blood to either of you or Rina-chan. He can't inherit the throne of Diamond, especially since he is my heir already and Uzu and Diamond aren't exactly near one another. Kenshin is still Naruto's uncle though. He and Kushina were actually half-siblings. Rina. Right. Her real name was Shira, wasn't it? When I met her, she had lost her memory and was given the name Rina. Kenshin had given her this name to be honest. Father, not again. Well, anyway, Kenshin is, as I said, my heir and since he has no child of his own, Naruto would be next in line. I see. Unfortunately, Carrie was our only heir. She was supposed to come back after seeing the world and take over from me. I was already past my prime when she left. Nowadays I'm way too old for this work, but I hope that Naruto can take it in a few years. Granted, I will try to continue until he is 18 at least, but I can't be sure my old body will actually allow me to do so. If Naruto leaves I have no other heir and that worries me greatly. That is indeed unfortunate, but I believe we can compromise. As I said, Naruto will inherit after Kenshin. Still he should have a lot of time before then. Kenshin is still young after all. Most likely Naruto will already have children of his own when the time comes. If necessary both Uzu and Diamond could be ruled by Naruto for a short time. His children could separate the rule of our countries again. Yes, that sounds perfect to me. Thank you Genryu Sai. But father, Naruto would need to spend enough time in Uzu to learn about the land, our people and customs. Not to mention Naruto should have the traditional lessons of Fuinjutsu and Kenjutsu. How will he be able to do that if he stays here in Diamond? We can't postpone his lessons until you step down either, because he'll likely be already the king of Diamond then. And as a king he will be needed here and unable to come to Uzu for his education. You may be right, Kenshin, but he needs to learn about the land, people and customs of Diamond as well. And he will need this knowledge sooner. Thankfully most lessons will help him in Uzu too. You know, Naruto could visit Uzu during his summer holidays to learn what he needs to know. As for the lessons, I'm sure we can accommodate a few additional teachers. We will need to rearrange his timetable for the additional lessons, but otherwise it should be no problem. But sorry, Chan, Naruto needs some free time too. How is he supposed to find his girlfriends if he is holed up and learning the entire day? Calm down, Sure. He can just use a few more Kagebushin than before, so at most the original Naruto would only take part in physical training to improve his endurance, speed and strength anyway. That should leave enough time for a date or two on most days. Wait, girlfriends? As in more than one? Of course. Kenshin, please excuse sorry. Chan's short answer. Normally people who come here already know about the nature. Bloodline and Diamond's marriage. Customs. In Diamond a man can marry many women. Well, I'm an exception, because nobody would dare to ask the queen to share her husband. Therefore I only have one wife. But as I said, it's the exception, not the rule. Naruto on the other hand will be expected to marry a few women. At least 7, but he could choose more if he wants to. 7 wives. Are you out of your mind? Kenshin's choice of words could have been better, but I must agree that I find that unacceptable as well. Naruto is the future king of Uzu and not some good-for-nothing playboy. As if you even know him. You can't take away his right to inherit the throne of Diamond just because you are more closely related to Naruto than we are. Sure and I are still his family as well. We still have a right to make him our heir. Maybe. But we still have the right to take Naruto back to Uzu. We really should do that anyway. Who knows what other ridiculous customs you have here? Genryu Sai. You were the one who proposed to let Naruto stay here. That was before I knew what you actually expected of him. If had known you want to marry him to a bunch of women, I would have never considered that. Calm down, Genryu Sai, Kenshin, Shira, Chan. Allow me to explain. Many people in Diamond are of the nature bloodline, but a consequence of this bloodline is that a woman with it can only have daughters. As a result, very few men are born in Diamond. Instead, most of the people who live here are foreigners, like me. You see, it is just necessary for women to share their husbands, or else our people would go extinct. He needs to produce enough heirs to secure our family's future, so as a king, Naruto will be expected to marry more girls than most men, especially since our family has grown so small. Additionally, if Naruto marries just one girl, his subjects will either think he isn't interested in girls at all and just married for the heir, or that he can't handle even a second wife, and that would make him look like a wimp. Surely you don't want that kind of reputation for yourself, Genryu Sai? And Uzumaki marries because of love and nothing else, ever. If Naruto can fall in love with all 7 women, he will have my blessing. But he will not marry for any other reason. Did I make myself clear? Of course. And for the record, I want him to marry out of love as well. Alright then. Is there anything more we should know before officially agreeing to let Naruto stay here for the majority of the year? Sorry? Well, maybe that we prepared invitations to other countries, so that they can send some girls who wish to marry Naruto. I suppose we should talk more about this later in private, Genryu Sai replied, his eyes twitching. He sighed and turned his attention to the young child, whose future had just been the subject of such intense and in-depth discussion. He had listened to the entire conversation, but Naruto had not spoken, which was a little concerning. Naturally, Genryu Sai was unaware that Sure had attempted to drug Naruto a few hours prior, but had instead drugged one of his guards. Although Queen Sari was well aware of this, neither she nor her husband had yet to suspect that anyone had taken the time to listen to Sure's excuses. Not even Naruto himself. The prince in question was listening intently to everything that was said. He was aware that he needed to learn more about his family in order to ascertain their precise objectives and the extent to which they were prepared to go. He could only spot another betrayal that way before he fell into a trap. He learned a lot about his family from the conversation. Despite the fact that it was extremely offensive, it was his life. Any decision should have been his for heaven's sake. How to elicit more details and persuade them to continue speaking without coming across as overly suspicious was the query. Indeed, that one might work. Say, Grandpa, can you tell me about my parents? How did they fall in love with each other? I would love to, Naruto, but unfortunately they meet and fell in love in Konoha. Kushina went there because of a duty of our family. I was still in Uzu and only meet your father Minato for the first time when he asked for Kushina's hand. And if you hadn't meddled in, he would have never gotten it, father. Kenshin. You aren't still sore about that draw, are you? I could have won, father. Maybe, but either way Kushina would have lost if I hadn't stepped in. Either her boyfriend or her brother. What happened, Grandpa? Oh well. In our family it's tradition that every man who wishes to marry an Uzumaki must prove himself in Mortal Kombat. Kenshin didn't like Minato. Because he wasn't good enough for Kushina, and offered to fight him for Kushina's hand. I agreed. Meaning, you did give me permission to kill him. After 5 minutes I knew Minato was pretty much as strong as Kenshin. As if, and thought that Minato had enough strength to protect Kushina. Yeah, we saw that when the Biju attacked Konoha. So I stopped the fight, unfortunately, and gave those two my blessing. Well, he never had mine, that's for sure. Since your uncle Kenshin was 12, he had won every single fight except for one. And that one ended in a draw. That was actually the fight with Minato. So Kenshin is still a bit sore about it. I'm not sore, and I would have won this one too, if you hadn't stopped it. Kenshin. For crying out loud. You were the one who insisted on proper behavior in front of the queen, so stop interrupting me. And you were the one who insisted manners weren't necessary. I'm simply following your example. Arg. Fine, whatever. Grandpa, can you tell me what mom was like when she was my age? Huh? Oh, of course. Well, let's see. Kushina was a bit impatient. Okay, very impatient. You know, once she was so eager to meet her friends, that she got sloppy with her sealing homework and blew up her room. Personally, I think it was more than just once, father. Yeah, you're right. She was very good at sealing when she took the time, but she wasn't very patient. Oh, and she was also very creative and a little rascal. She played practical jokes on some of the royals who came to see us, though she kind of ended up playing a practical joke on herself once. Kenshin and Kushina received private instruction, but Kushina wanted to attend school like any other girl. She initially requested permission, but it was denied because she was my daughter and everyone would have recognized her, and sending bodyguards would sort of negate the point of attending school like a typical child. Nevertheless, Kushina made a cage bushin and sent it to lessons like politics or sealing, where she was certain that it wouldn't be hit and dispelled, and she rearranged her lessons so that physical training or kenjutsu would take place in the evening. She made a cage bushin for her studies in the morning, put on henge to hide her identity, and went to school. After her regular school day was over, she made another cage bushin to complete her homework and attempted to switch it back with the one she had made in the afternoon. For months, neither her teachers nor those in the palace or her school noticed anything. However, one day, I was shocked to receive a letter from the headmaster summoning me to her school. It turned out that the headmaster's son was a bully, and Kushina had protected a classmate from him. The father didn't think his son was anything but an angel, and he typically disciplined the other kids. He undoubtedly intended to do the same with Kushina, but he quickly changed his mind after realizing who I was and who Kushina was. I then allowed her to continue attending her regular school, especially since she had already made a number of friends there, and I simply gave a few samurai's orders to keep an eye on the school from the outside. Wow. Mom must have been lively. Haha, true. You know, Naruto, I'm a bit surprised. I would have thought you would be just as lively as her, but you were rather quiet at first. Well, one of my guards is sick. Her name is Haruhi-chan and I'm a bit worried about her. That's all. Your Highness. If I may, how about I escort Prince Naruto back to his sick guard? I wanted to give him something in private anyway. It would give you and our visitor from Uzu time to arrange anything in regards to Prince Naruto's lessons. I will just leave the scrolls and the report of my last mission here, then you can read it whenever you find time. Thank you, Sayuri-chan, that would be lovely. Sayuri felt relieved that her excuse had been granted and that she could leave before the queen saw her report or any of the Konoha documents. She had never been happier to leave the queen's company. Following their departure from the throne room, Naruto was given a few old photos that had been taken in Konoha. All he could do was look at them. They had meant the world to him only a few weeks ago. Sakura Haruno was the subject of one picture that was taken without her consent. Without hesitation, Naruto tossed it into a trash can. On his first day of school, the Hokage took a picture of himself in front of the academy. He was at Ichiraku's with another from Iruka. Sensei. He hesitated at the next one. He practiced throwing kunai during a photo shoot at a training ground. Hinata was only marginally present in the photo. For some reason, It reminded him of something he had seen before. It dawned on him then that Suzura Sensei had shown him a picture like that and described how to determine whether a girl is attracted to a boy. Whoa. Hinata genuinely liked him. In any case, it was too late for that now. Usually, he had smiled whenever he looked at those photos. But to him, they now appeared so hollow and phony, except for the picture of Hinata. Iruka Sensei, Sakura, the Hokage, the Ichiraku family. In Konoha, that was all he had. He had his teachers, his guards, and his family here. Well, perhaps. All he needed to do was figure out who he could trust. He could also make friends. After all, it couldn't be more difficult than in Konoha. And at least he could try to bring Hinata here if there really was no one he could trust. Sume was more than a little worried as she watched her son train. Following Orochimaru's defection, his team was even more of a disaster than the Sannin. Of course, Kiba was not perfect. Mostly being impatient, brazen, and cheeky. As many Inuzukas as possible. However, none of them had previously experienced such issues with their teams. Not even those who had to deal with a Hyuga and an Aburame as well. In fact, Sume helped future tracking teams. In the end, it was rather typical. Typically, you mentioned that the team members were also packed. Then you explain that after someone slapped some common sense into the obnoxious Hyugas during a spar or actual fight, they frequently improved greatly. And that in order to maintain control over every single bug they had, Aburames needed their accuracy. The rest of the team could be attacked by those bugs if they were overly careless. Finally, note that Hyuga and Aburame were both capable of imparting patience and strategy. That usually worked, and the following tracking team was prepared for their assignments. When it wasn't sufficient, the Jonin ensured that all genin were able to cooperate. Sadly, Kiba's situation was anything but typical. The largest issue on his team was a Hyuga. Sume had heard about the most obnoxious Hyugas, who constantly tried to take charge of the team, gave orders to everyone, boasted about how strong all the Hyugas were, and flaunted their abilities whenever they had the chance. But Kiba's team's Hyuga didn't do any of that. Hinata.san didn't really boast or flaunt himself. She made no effort to be a member of the team or even to lead it. Everyone who attempted to give her orders simply found it difficult to deal with her. She's particularly Jonin Sensei. Shino Aburame and Kiba were left to fend for themselves while the sensei worked to persuade the Hyuga to cooperate. And began fighting whenever they had the chance. Even though it was still referred to as sparring, both boys grew increasingly vicious during each battle. They would go from being rivals to actual enemies if they weren't stopped quickly. And would probably undermine one another while on missions. The idea of a team in which all three genin attempted to cause trouble made Sume shudder. While reflecting on the counsel she had given her son, she distracted herself by avoiding a few stray kunais. Even though she was too preoccupied with her own issues to notice, she advised him to treat Hinata.san with kindness. To concentrate on strengthening himself and Shino Aburame instead. Her head advised her that Kiba and Shino should fight the Hyuga girl together and discipline her because it was strange. However, as she was about to tell Kiba that, she heard herself warn him not to turn against her. It was just too weird. Sume couldn't think of a single reason for this caution. In fact, she had far more reasons to believe Hinata.san would soon get kicked out of the shinobi roster. The sabotage on her missions or yelling at the Hokage were on their own enough to get her a civilian life. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of doom whenever she just thought of giving the girl a stern talking. To. Kiba felt it too, and was even more confused about it than her. When he recounted the first day, he was actually surprised at first. Hinata.san had done anything that usually would drive Kiba insane. From completing the bloody obstacle curse in 5 minutes when he and Shino had needed 4 damn hours to ignoring him. But during the day Kiba never even thought about telling the Hyuga off. He had decided then and there to give her a piece of his mind the next time she didn't show the respect he deserved. But every time something did happen and Kiba so much as considered giving Hinata.san a hard time, his instincts just screamed at him. And suddenly he knew that being anything but nice to Hinata Hyuga was a horrible idea. Without even knowing why. Naturally, he informed Sume of this peculiarity. She also stated that Inuzuka's intuition was always right. Similar to their noses. As well as to hear them. However, she was unable to provide an explanation for the warning's existence. Not even Sume herself could understand it. Maybe she should have invited Shikaku to a drink or two and asked him for help. Unfortunately, he was really busy trying to find that Kyuubi kid. Poor guy. In the end, she had settled for trusting her instincts. Even if her instincts were not making much sense right now. With the Kyuubi kid, her instincts usually made more sense. And at first she was overjoyed that the kid was gone. He always smelled like fox and danger. Granted, the Sandame smelled like danger too, but that was to be expected. After all, he was the Hokage and one of the strongest ninjas of their time. Like everyone else, she had seen the reports from the academy about that boy and he wasn't strong at all. Besides, even if she hadn't read the files, Kiba had told her enough to realize that the kid didn't have a chance as a ninja. The stench of danger, however, was still very much present. The boy was far too weak to pose a threat on his own, so it was inevitable that the seal would eventually fail. She had explained this to the Sandame ages ago, but he only pointed out that the Yondaime had smelled of danger too, even as a child. It was like trying to argue with a god. Damned door. The Hokage couldn't see that the child had no abilities whatsoever, regardless of all reports that basically screamed it in his face. Seriously, how could anyone, much less the Hokage himself, ignore the fact that the Kyuubi kid couldn't make a single clone yet, after 3 fucking years of training? Even if Sume ignored the risk of the Kyuubi, the Sandame's law about the kid was just as dangerous to the children of her clan. The whole Inuzuka clan knew that the Kyuubi kid smelled like a fox, but they couldn't explain the why to any of their pups due to that damned law. That was actually the main reason the Inuzukas tried to keep any children away from that boy. Unfortunately, Inuzukas weren't exactly all that obedient, regardless of their loyalty. It was only a matter of time until someone said something wrong and broke the law without even knowing about it. At least that was what she feared until the Kyuubi kid disappeared. Sume was relieved beyond measure that the kid was gone, and she took part in quite a few of the resulting parties. Many Inuzukas actually celebrated that occasion for a long time. She sincerely hoped that the boy had already passed away. She didn't really have anything against the child, but she didn't like how he resembled a defective explosive tag. You didn't burn it because you were angry if you discovered a bad explosive tag. You brought it to a specialist, who took the appropriate safety measures and disposed of the tag in the most secure location. In the child's case, this would have meant putting him down permanently or training him in a rural area with lots of seals around until he could control himself. Nobody would ever combine defective explosive tags with functional ones. However, it seems that placing the Kyuubi kid in a school with other pupils was unique in some way. In any case, Sume was confident that Inoichi could help the child forget what had happened and regain his loyalty as soon as he was returned, even if the child was still alive. She did, after all, know Inoichi and had faith in his skills. And Tsunade, Sama and Jiraiya. Sama are still there in case Inoichi fails in some way. 2 days ago, they returned to Konoha and would deal with the boy if needed. And if the boy was already dead in reality, so much the better, actually. What could possibly go wrong from here was beyond Sume's comprehension. But why in the world was she still so afraid if it was really that easy and straightforward? And why was she unable to get over her uneasiness? After a near-death experience, Sayuri always liked to have a few drinks. It was just how she handled near misses. She was still in a pub at 1 in the morning, so it wasn't the first time. Sayuri had been thoroughly sloshed before as well. But for the first time, she thought a report was more risky than the mission itself. It doesn't matter. The mission was successfully accomplished. To be honest, her companion was equally strange. An actual old woman, including parasol and manners. At night, what this woman was doing in such a dilapidated pub was beyond Sayuri's comprehension. She appeared completely out of place. For crying out loud, she placed a napkin on her lap. Sayuri was curious about her purpose for being here, but she was at a loss for how to ask without making a scene. She was fortunately saved by the elder, who initiated the conversation. Good evening. Or does one say good morning at this hour? My apologies, I don't know all that much about pub manners. I rarely get to indulge in such nightlife. Oh really? Could have fooled me. How about a simple, hi, by the way, my name is Sayuri and I come here often after a mission. But I have never seen you before. So how did a nice lady like yourself ended up in such a shabby place? In fact, Sayuri winced at what she was saying. She must have consumed a lot more alcohol than she had anticipated, and she hoped the elderly woman wouldn't think this was a poor pick up line. Or even worse, a good one, and answer it. It's nice to meet you, Sayuri-san. My name is Haruhi and I'm here for the first time actually. To be honest, I'm here because of an argument. It's rather stupid in fact and I don't want to bore you. No, please do tell. If nothing else it's bound to be better than the bartender's drunken wailing. So, if you want to hear it. I went to see some distant relatives 2 days ago, and they had a little girl who was barely a teenager yet. She was talking about a boy she had seen in the city, and apparently he was in her age range and pretty attractive. She kept dreaming about dating him, and I might have told her a few things about men and how to find a husband, all with the best of intentions, I promise you, but she was pretty sure my advice was out of date. Grandmas should stick to housekeeping tips, she said. People go to pubs or discos these days to find their future better halves, and I doubt that you have actually set foot in either of those establishments in the last 2 or 3 decades, so it's not like your advice could help me all that much. She even thanked me for trying. I must admit that she was correct, at least in that I hadn't been to any bars or the like for a while, so I came here. I honestly didn't think many men would visit Titan's pubs or discos, mainly because there aren't many men in this city, let alone some boys who aren't even allowed to drink yet. However, I've already seen a lot more men here than I anticipated, so I'm beginning to think she was correct that my advice was out of date as well. Ha ha ha. Oh, that's rich, lady, you just made my day, to go that far for a young girl's crush. Glad that someone has fun with it, but seriously, it's more about proving that I'm not outdated yet, or trying to at least. Haha. Sorry, it's just, well, it's quite unusual, isn't it? Besides, the funny part is actually, that I'm not the only one who ended in this shabby pub because of a teenager. Oh, is that so? How about you tell me about the trouble your kid caused? Then we can drink to our problems until the alcohol gives us some crazy ideas that may actually even work, or at least until we can forget them. Though the child in question is neither my own nor the real source of the issue, I like the way you see Haruhi-san. He's probably the same boy your little relative dreamed about, and at least he's the only boy I know of who lives in Titan. His name is Naruto, and he's actually pretty cute. As for my last mission, which was to retrieve Naruto's files from his old residence, it was simple, but what I discovered, well, let's just say I didn't want to stay for a report. Poor boy. Really, I had seen inmates who had better lives. Really? What happened? And why didn't his parents take Naruto's files with them when they came here? Those bastards from his so-called home sabotaged him whenever they could. They replaced his schoolbooks with versions that either contained lies about almost anything or didn't contain any of the most important information at all. Some teachers sent him out of the classroom during crucial lessons, and the men who were supposed to protect him did nothing. In fact, he lost both of his parents the day he was born. He must have spent more time in the hospital than I did, and I doubt that all of those stays were brought on by illnesses or accidents. Some even attacked the poor boy before he even reached the double digits of age. What? But why would anybody attack such a small child? I mean, even if the parents were enemies, it doesn't sound like this Naruto could have had any memories of them anyway. Exactly. But so much wisdom is apparently too much to ask of those Konoha bastards. Konoha? I never heard of that place. Must be one shabby, backwater village, if those living there are that barbarian. Barbarians, indeed. This is especially true given how charming Naruto is. A lively, kind, and hardworking boy who always gives it his all. However, the location is well known, at least in the West. Konoha is a ninja village of the Fire Nation, and you may be familiar with Minato Namikaze, who is actually Naruto's father and the village's leader. Huh? Namikaze? The man of the West who was supposed to be as strong as a crystal? But that makes even less sense. I thought Namikaze was well liked in his country. And wasn't the Fire Nation supposed to be one of the nice ones? How could they be cruel to the son of a leader? Even if said leader deceased long ago. Well, it's a bit of a long story, Haruhi-san. That's fine. You listen to my troubles as well. The least I could do is listen to yours. Who knows? It may even do you some good to get it of your chest, Sayuri-san. Yes, that is absolutely true. The queen told me about Naruto when she was looking for guards for him. It appears that he wandered into the palace's basement and emerged in her private quarters, of all places. Queen Sari used an ancestor table seal on him because only royal blood can open the basement. Naruto is our queen's great grandson and Princess Carrie's grandson. As you can imagine, the prince left Konoha very abruptly, so the queen asked me to go and retrieve his files. She wanted to know why they allowed someone as significant as Naruto to travel so far by himself, even though no one knew that he was the queen's great grandson and the son of Minato Namikaze. Granted, the man passed away years ago, but the village still loves him, so it was just too strange. I took a few peeks into Naruto's files during the mission to find anything related to him, and I did find references to his parents and took their files too. But what I found most were the incidents I mentioned earlier and some really strange decisions, most of which came from the current leader of that village. The mission itself wasn't that hard, but then again, it's just a Western country. Like the one who, after learning that he was descended from Uzumaki, enrolled him as a regular student at their academy. Uzumaki? Wait. Didn't the Uzumakis have genetically too much chakra for people of the West? I heard some rumors they needed a training in chakra control similar to those with our nature bloodline, because their chakra reserves were simply too massive for the normal exercises of the West. But I thought the Uzumakis are a royal line from a different Western nation? Didn't you say Konoha was a part of the Fire Nation? Yup. And no, I don't know how the Uzumakis got involved. Anyway, we have this boy with far too much chakra for any standard education just from his Uzumaki genes alone. That should have already been dealt with differently. Then he's also a Jinchuriki. Remember the stories about the start of the Shira clan? Well, the prince actually hosts the Kyuubi instead of Shukaku. And he also has the nature bloodline as well. Impressive. Sounds like he has more chakra in his body than some countries in their entire army. He must have trouble sitting still during class then. True, but it's not the only questionable choice. The prince lived alone since he was 5 years old. No child, much less a future king, should ever live alone. He would have spent a lot less time in the hospital if he had lived with some sensible adults as well. Aside from the fact that the village's current leader attempted to pair the prince with a girl from that village, which is understandable at least so far, here's the punchline. The girl is not only a complete nobody, but she's also a fangirl who is violent, cruel, and conceited, and Sakura Haruno isn't a good fit for anyone sane, much less our prince. And those Konoha bastards persuaded Prince Naruto to ask her out frequently. Let's just say that I didn't want to be anywhere near the queen when she read those files, and fortunately I didn't have to give a report. She is pathetically weak, even by Western standards, and she is incredibly lazy unless it's about her crush or pretty clothes. That seems quite fortunate. Sayuri.san. After all this time the prince is finally back with his family. For this alone we should be grateful. Besides, he will have a better life from now on. The queen will make better decisions, I'm sure. I suppose it's best to let her handle Prince Naruto's situation. Yeah, I think so too. Then again, it would be rather hard to actually make worse decisions. Hey, I have an idea about your little relative and her boy troubles. You could just let her mother deal with it. I mean, if it's best for the prince to let the queen handle Konoha and everything, then it's sure best to let a mother handle her daughter's first crush, too. Don't you agree? Even if things don't work out for her, it's not really a big deal. After all, not getting together with the first boy or girl ever saw is hardly going to be the end of the world. Ha ha ha, what a wise choice. Let us drink to problems others have to take care of, Sayuri.san. Those two spent the remainder of the evening together, celebrating obligations that were the problems of others. Haruhi Mojimi was still accustomed to heavy drinking, but Sayuri was already too inebriated to notice much. After all, she had spent years among influential people and in courts. It also helped that she had a special little medication to combat alcohol. In fact, Haruhi was as solemn as she had been when she had first arrived at this pub. The mention of Naruto made them so solemn that two young girls listened in on them. Similar to how the young clan woman began to pay attention when the queen was brought up. When Haruhi looked back, she was certain that she couldn't have had more luck if she had planned everything Sayuri.san said. Initially, she was concerned about the clan eavesdropper. After all, sometimes having inaccurate or insufficient information is worse than having none at all. it appears that a particular cunning clan was going to be reminded of this as well. Concerning the two girls, obviously, they were familiar with the prince's name. Both appeared serious and were quiet and composed. They could not yet be of legal drinking age, but they drank their beers with a certain familiarity. They must therefore be crystals. Despite being young in body, they are already adults in legal terms. Given that they knew Naruto's name, they were most likely his guards. When Haruhi heard how poorly Konoha had treated him, the young girls scowled, as she could see in the mirrors behind the bar. The prince appears to have already made some close friends. Fantastic, particularly considering that his guards ended up becoming his friends. One thing was that, in spite of his time in Konoha and the appalling role models there, Prince Naruto did not become a barbarian. If they were still worried about him while he was on duty, he appeared to treat them quite well instead. Another benefit was that the young prince was less likely to attempt to elude his guards. Additionally, he didn't appear to have many trust issues at this time. A small miracle, given what those Konoha residents did or did not do. Therefore, it appears that Naruto-sama was headed toward becoming a kind and compassionate king despite Konoha's best efforts. Sooner or later, the queen will undoubtedly notice and appropriately address any issues because his files were accurate enough to reveal so many problems from a few quick glances. What advice should she give Moriko-chan, then? In order to assist the prince, how could she best position the young girl? He will eventually understand how wicked and cruel Konoha had been to him, as well as how rotten they had been. The prince will probably stop believing in other people once he gets to this stage. Perhaps even those with whom he was already friends. When this moment arrives, he must know Moriko. She can tell when Naruto is withdrawing into himself and talk to him about his problems as long as they are able to communicate. After that, it ought to be fairly simple to offer guidance in order to gauge the reliability of people he has doubts about. This piece of advice did not concern Haruhi. It was just a reasonable precaution for a prince. Even more so for Prince Naruto. Anyone who wanted the best for him and the nation would benefit from such a test, while those who wished to exploit him or assassinate him would be constrained. Now, then, how can we begin this friendship? The key question was that. Correct, that might work. Wasn't Naruto's education ruined by Konoha? They must have undermined his teamwork lessons as well. And the queen would prefer that topic to a lot of others, since in school Prince Naruto couldn't be allowed to show weakness in such a critical area. As it would look like the future king either didn't care about others or was too stupid to help them. Haruhi wasn't even sure which one would be worse. The teachers would likely be told about the sabotage. So if he received bad marks at first, for example in geography or history, the teachers would keep it quiet and others wouldn't know his grades. But if Prince Naruto was bad in subjects like taijutsu or teamwork, it couldn't be hidden. The queen either had to explain the entire situation publicly or make sure her heir caught up to other students before the term started. Even if she told about Konoha's sabotage, it could still hurt Naruto. People would assume he was kept stupid. Heck, they would even be right, but they would also believe he will stay stupid and that would undermine his reign before it even began. No, the queen would focus on any subjects that somehow related to a king's work and where bad results couldn't be hidden. She had to. So if we could arrange for Moriko to take part in the prince's teamwork lessons. After all, the prince couldn't possibly learn it with his guards. As crystals, they were simply too good. They would compensate for any mistake Naruto did, read him and act accordingly. But his future classmates wouldn't be able to do so. No, the prince couldn't learn it with his guards. Thought they would probably try it that way at first. And the teachers would realize their mistake right away. After that, they would look for reliable kids Naruto's age. Therefore, if Moriko was nearby, maybe because Tenchi-sama brought her to the palace as a gift or reward of some sort. And if, while admiring the lovely ornaments around her, she bumped into someone, she would have to offer a full apology, of course. Even if it meant creating a bigger commotion. Then, when the queen tried to imagine a child Naruto's age, Moriko would come to mind first. The queen was already aware of Moriko's dependability. Naturally, she would ask her if she would like to participate in Naruto's training. Moriko was able to assist the prince with more than just one of his lessons, which will facilitate future assistance with other subjects. Additionally, she could easily start a conversation and make friends with the prince. Additionally, it takes a lot of practice to be a good team player. The only question that remained was the date of the first teamwork lesson. The Queen will undoubtedly review her heir's files as soon as she can. Maybe she just wants a brief synopsis. However, she will read everything right away if she witnesses the same things that Sayuri-san did. Even if it meant calling off a meeting of the council. The Queen will therefore be aware of and able to handle the most urgent matters by tomorrow morning, including his taijutsu lessons, teamwork, and other similar matters. Unless she's already done it. She will therefore have those lessons scheduled by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. It appears that Tenshi and Moriko will be going to the palace tomorrow. For once, the horses were not as patient as the riders. However, that made sense. They could, after all, deliver the invitations to Prince Naruto's prospective brides. Everyone wanted to watch the royal family expand again. Hooves thundered everywhere as the gate opened. The journey to the leaders of distant and nearby countries began with 200 riders. They all had different destinations. And each had a scroll and a little letter. The scroll included the rules and other information, and the letter described the opportunity Queen Sari gave them. Every one of those letters would be greeted with excitement, joy, and occasionally greed. Except for one. There was one particular letter among those that would lead to a great deal of grief, conflict, and sorrow. Yes, even headaches and fear. This letter was identical to its brethren in terms of wording, stamp, and offer. Actually, the address was the only distinction. Konoha was the recipient. The Queen had read a lot of horrible things. From whatever Sure considered love letters over reports about her daughter at school to mission reports where either the mission itself or the morals of the people involved were shattered beyond recognition. It sort of came with being a queen. Well, the messes from Sure and Carrie were probably partially her own fault. But that's beside the point. Anyway, even with this vast and disturbing experience, she had never seen anything like what now lay before her. She had actually planned to just skim the papers from Konoha. After all, they couldn't have watched him too closely if he ended up traveling alone. But the sheer amount of paperwork looked more like the documentation of a decade-long experiment. And with each paper the Queen read, she grew just more angry, and more worried. Concerned about Naruto's mental health, as well as his physical well-being. He was worried because he thought he wasn't deserving of love and care. Concerned about his infatuation with this Sakura girl. Concerned about how he will handle his fiancés. And how he might even fall in love with the girls. And whether his heart was still there. No. He obviously went above and beyond to assist others. She had personally witnessed it. And he was consistently cheerful, vivacious, and kind. He couldn't have pulled that off so convincingly. Nevertheless, Naruto might lose faith in everyone the very next time they attempted anything at all with him. She needed to make sure his guards could keep him safe from that kind of thing. This nation would lose a bright future if he lost faith and trust in other people, and Naruto's contentment. No, you must avoid that at all costs. She had just inherited a bright, charming, and affectionate boy, and she couldn't stand the idea of him becoming a heartless, cunning, and heartless jerk. He might even reject his own relatives. From her own self. Retreating within himself. Keeping his thoughts and desires to himself. Similar to when the Uzumakis were meeting with. Fuck, however, it couldn't be. It was unable to. During lunch today, Naruto had been as animated as usual. How? When? Most importantly, who had the audacity to harm him in this manner? After all, not many people were permitted to see him. Basically, just his family, his guards, and his teachers. What? His sentries? Just after lunch, wasn't one of them drugged? Or, she assumed, during. Bloody tactics and stupid Sure. However, hell no, he is aware. What a waste. Naruto is aware. It makes sense why he was so quiet when he met with his Uzu family. Oh no. If Naruto somehow discovered that Haruhi-chan had been drugged by Sure, or attempted to give him drugs, it makes sense that he no longer trusted his own blood. Especially considering how poorly Konoha had already treated him. What a nightmare. Giving Hideko-sensei the files pertaining to Naruto's health and allowing her to perform a comprehensive examination would be the first thing tomorrow morning. Hopefully, the blood of Uzumaki and Kyuubi had been sufficient. It's better to be safe than sorry. She would then need to discuss the sabotage with his teachers and choose which subjects to emphasize. Additionally, they planned to adequately prepare Naruto for the upcoming term so he wouldn't appear foolish. Finally, Figure out how to rebuild Naruto's confidence in other people, ensure that Sure doesn't ruin any progress with his crazy schemes, and inform the Uzumakis and the council about Konoha's behavior, her husband's assistants, and Naruto's current condition. Without starting a war, preferably. Oh, happiness. The Kin clan at 2 o'clock at night. Kuriko entered the room with assurance and a hint of annoyance. She had prepared a list of the clothing, jewelry, and cosmetics she needed to purchase before classes began, and she had scheduled her trip to the beauty salon for tomorrow. However, before she could finish, she was called to Reiko. Sama. She could go on later, though. You wanted to see me, Reiko. Sama. Well, Kuriko-chan, you're still awake. We recently learned that the prince actually lived in Konoha and had a girlfriend named Sakura Haruno. She will undoubtedly be sent from Konoha, as it seemed that Konoha's leader took a long time to bring them together. Naturally, you should be her first friend here. As for the girl herself, she will undoubtedly turn into a joke sooner or later. It seems that even Westerners view her as pitifully weak. She is, to put it another way, a fangirl, abusive, cruel, and conceited. She is also lazy, unless it involves nice clothes or the prince, and it appears that she has a crush on him. In any case, she can easily set up a date with him for you because Prince Naruto has already asked her out on several occasions. You can use the clan funds if your own savings and allowance are insufficient. Don't be afraid to hit people. He's probably used to seeing this from his Sakura and will see it as a sign of strength and leadership. Make sure Prince Naruto sees that you're just as confident as Sakura, if not more so. As for his taste in girls, I suppose he likes pretty girls with good fashion sense. As far as I can tell, his father, Minato Namikaze, was a hero to the people of Konoha, so they must have favored him greatly. He must be accustomed to receiving preferential treatment, praise, and presents, so you should show him a lot of praise. Otherwise, he will just accept it as normal since he is accustomed to it from Konoha. We also learned that the prince lived alone since he was 5 years old and attended a regular school even though he needed different exercises. I think he values his independence, occasionally spends time alone, and enjoys being around common people and flaunting himself. At the very least, those are the only reasons I can think of for attending a regular school rather than receiving private instruction and living alone in a village where everyone adores him. Nevertheless, our final piece of information is that Prince Naruto spent a lot of time in the hospital, though I'm not sure how long he was there or why, other than the fact that it apparently could have been avoided if he hadn't lived alone. I suppose he just didn't take care of himself enough and ended up getting a cold a little too often. That's all we've learned up to this point, and I doubt we'll learn much more before Sakura arrives. MHH. I see. At least I don't have to change much of my plans. Just be a bit more throughout with the preparations. Thank you, Reiko. Sama. This will help me a lot when I finally meet the prince. So if that is everything. Of course. Have a good night. Kuriko returned to her room in order to complete her shopping list. The mission was too crucial to postpone, even though it would likely be early in the morning before she had everything in writing. It's also way too much fun. In any case, she could sleep in tomorrow. Quiet. Total and absolute quiet. And be concerned. Even if someone had checked Naruto's room that night, they would have only discovered that sleep never arrived, even though midnight had long since passed. Not for Naruto, and definitely not for any of the girls. After he got back from seeing his grandfather and uncle, they hardly spoke. In any case, they hadn't discussed much in advance either. Naruto and his guards had been deep in contemplation ever since Haruhi-chan was discharged from the hospital. They were both attempting to accept what had occurred. Each is concerned about a potential retry. They were all looking for hints as to who had drugged Haruhi. At least for those who were unaware at the time. Naruto began to rise with a sign. Naruto. Sama. What are you doing? It's almost 3 in the morning. Sorry, Maya-chan. I just can't sleep. Too much has happened. I just want to get some fresh air and think. Maya put on a cloak and said, I see. Okay, who wants to come along too? Actually. I wanted to go alone, Maya-chan. But that's too dangerous. Especially now. Someone in this castle wants to harm you. Sort of, probably. Maya-chan. Please calm down. Whoever drugged Haruhi-chan could have also just wanted to rape her. We don't know who it was, so the attack could have simply been against her, Rika said. Either way, It's still too dangerous for the prince to be alone, Maya continued. Ayame quietly confessed, actually, I know who drugged Haruhi, Chan. What? Was yelled by nearly everyone. Miyuki. Chan urged, come on, don't keep us in suspense. Ayame gave Naruto a curious glance, and he could tell she was aware. He gave a shrug. The number of people who were aware of what his Gigi had done didn't really matter to him, at least not anymore. I heard how the queen ranted at the king. Apparently he tried to drug the prince with aphrodisiacs. So he would have some fun. Queen sorry May wasn't in on it, but she still protected him from the fallout. It was unbelievable to Kyoko. What, the king drugged Haruhi, Chan? She exclaimed. Yes. And tried to drug the prince. Tisk. The royal couple wanted us to protect their heir, but then they're the biggest treat to him. Typical. Ayame burst into tears. Tariko said, holy shit. That's insane. No kidding. Also he'll likely get away with it, too. Worse, he'll probably try again at some point. So we'll have to be extra careful, even with Naruto. Sama's family. Especially with his family. Regardless that they had actually been the ones who had ordered us to protect him. Damn it, I hate hypocrites, shouted Ayame. Ayame. Chan. Are you absolutely sure about this? I mean, it's kind of hard to believe. Could it be a misunderstanding? After all, you didn't hear the beginning and you had kept some distance, right? So maybe, he said something different and you just misheard him. Miyuki was attempting to rationalize. No, Miyuki. Chan. Ayame. Chan is right. I heard them too. It was pretty obvious. Besides, do you remember how Gigi didn't want Haruhi Chan to eat my ramen? I'm sure that's how he drugged her. Gran was pretty angry. The whole mess is actually part of the reason I want to be alone right now. Naruto. Sama. I can understand that, but, well, you know, we have very specific orders to never let you out of our sight. Miyuki murmured unpleasantly. Yeah? So what? We also have very specific orders to follow Naruto. Sama's orders. Kaji grumbled. It doesn't matter. Even if we want to let Naruto Sama have his privacy, we would get caught for sure. Especially now. The queen may know who drugged Haruhi Chan, but none of the other guards seem to know. If they see Naruto Sama without us they'll raise the alarm. Then he won't be able to take his walk in peace anyway and we'll be in more trouble than we could handle to boot, Maya said. Rika calmly questioned, Kaji. Chan. Ayame. Chan. Do you two even realize that you're talking about treason? As though she were discussing the weather. Oh. How can it be treason to help and protect the prince? I thought that were our fucking orders, Ayame replied. Ayame. Chan. Calm down. The question is, do we follow Naruto Sama's orders over the queen's? Or the queen's orders over Naruto Sama's? I never imagined that we'll have take a side. I thought following one would always automatically mean following the other as well. Kazami said completely perplexed. I agree with her. It's ridiculous, but we'll probably have to protect Naruto Sama from the queen and the king at some point, Mariko said. Tariko angrily exclaimed, well, I for one will stand with Naruto Sama. Treason or no. Kaji said, and I'll stand with you, one day, Naruto Sama will rule as king because we have seen how kind and hardworking he is. Because of this, I will obey his orders over those of the queen and the king, especially since they have betrayed not only Haruhi Chan but also Naruto Sama. Ayame declared, Prince Naruto is apparently the only trustworthy member of the royal family, and I will protect him, no matter against whom. Of course, I always knew that being a crystal was dangerous, that any failed mission was likely to end in permanent injury, death, or capture, but that we'd also be in trouble if the mission went perfectly. Just because the king or the queen have certain plans. That's too much. Naruto was surprised to find that everyone else agreed. That still leaves the problem of the other guards. What if Naruto Sama isn't here when others come looking and we don't know where he is? Not to mention, it still is dangerous for him to be alone, Kazami stated. Naruto simply created a clone in response, and the original changed into his seductive jutsu. However, he or she did, for once, wear clothing. Everyone started getting ready after the guards raised their jaws from the ground. Naruto received a seal from Kaji, who explained that it would activate on its own if he encountered any danger. He would be shunted to the other side of the seal, which was concealed beneath the covers in his bed. Tariko and Mariko added a communication seal as a follow-up, in case Naruto Sama wanted to speak with his guards or just got lost. The twins acknowledged, somewhat sheepishly, that they frequently played practical jokes with those seals. His clone then picked up an adventure book and began to read it. He couldn't sleep either, or he would vanish, after all. Now that everything was in place, Naruto opened the basement painting and gratefully slipped into the quiet and darkness it offered. He needed to reflect on his family and his future. Sweat trickled out of his nose. His lungs hurt like they had been struck by a bijou-sized sledgehammer, and his muscles screamed at him. By now, though, he was accustomed to it. Had spent years getting used to it. Usually he didn't pay attention to it. After all, it was much simpler to overlook that kind of pain than the loss of his family. Much simpler. Sasuke had been training himself into the ground every day since the massacre of the Uchiha. In part to gain the strength to murder his brother. Additionally, he did it in part to divert his attention from the memories, the hurt, and most importantly, the loneliness. However, Sasuke now trained more frequently to release his pent-up energy and less to avoid those emotions. That and habit, anyway. As he dotted the dummies with shuriken and kunais, he could picture his fangirls' faces on them. While performing push-ups, contemplating a pointless and foolish task. Imagine the look on the face of a teacher who beat up another fool during spars and refused to share some good jutsus. By this point, Sasuke Uchiha had trained in this manner. In fact, a few of his instructors advised him to moderate his tone. Overtraining was the topic of discussion. Pshaw. All they're doing is being envious. If such a thing existed, his parents would have undoubtedly advised Itachi to take occasional breaks. However, they didn't. Additionally, Sasuke needed to overtake Itachi and catch up to him. He just didn't have time for teachers who were jealous and petty. He didn't exactly have time for a teacher like Kakashi, who was so useless, but he was powerless to stop it. The Ninja Council was uninterested, the Hokage was irrational, and the Civilian Council lacked the authority to take any action regarding ninja-related issues. Even worse, some of them had faith in that foolish Kakashi. It was frustrating. Sasuke had no idea who else he could turn to for assistance. He was therefore confined to his teacher for the time being, if he could be referred to as such. In all honesty, the man only served to irritate everyone. He never helped with any kind of training and was always hours late. He didn't assist with these tasks the elderly Hokage referred to as missions, didn't supervise a single spar, didn't give any jutsus, and didn't offer any form or other guidance. Actually, the only things Kakashi ever does are read his porn, accept Hokage missions, and then report back. No one enjoys seeing others reading porn. Sasuke could take care of the rest on his own. If only he'd been permitted to. Heck, Sakura could pull that off. Then perhaps she would be useful. Well, at least in part. As of right now, Sakura was even less helpful than their teacher. Even so, that was unexpected. He was constantly distracted from his work by her loud noises. She didn't assist during D ranks, of course. In any case, she probably wouldn't have any impact. Sakura was so scrawny that she could likely topple over with a little wind. Naturally, she was forced to wear her most useless and restrictive clothing. Her hair, which was excessively long, had to be worn loose. What was wrong with that girl? Really, her hair or her dress might get tangled in something. Not just during training but also during missions. If Sakura ever trained or participated in any missions, at least they could. Was that sufficient justification for doing nothing? No, not at all. She could always change it, after all, and it was her own decision. Sakura was simply worthless. It's simple. Sasuke began taking his kunais out of the targets and returning them to his holster with a sign. He couldn't really practice throwing kunais because it was getting too dark and he couldn't even see the targets. If he had been able to deal with his so-called team, he would have liked to have continued. The real graduation test, as Kakashi described it, came to mind as he walked home. Sasuke would have described it as inconsiderate, foolish, or pointless. Most likely all three combined. Regretfully, it was also very predictive of problems to come. Sasuke could have seen every single fucking issue he now faced in those few hours if he had paid attention. It could have been seen by all, To be honest, it was pretty amazing. In an unsettling manner. Everything was there, from Sakura's lack of usefulness to Kakashi's hours. Long tardiness. For crying out loud, even the goddamn porn that Kakashi read was identical. Sasuke had some doubts that Team 7 would ever succeed. Ultimately, they also didn't perform all that well on the pointless test. Sakura had been unconscious for 2 hours after being knocked out barely 10 minutes into the test. They had just 30 minutes left to retrieve those blasted balls when she eventually woke up. Sasuke had at least touched them during the battle. Even though he wasn't adequate. Not shocking in comparison to a Jonin. Sakura failed the test the first time, so Kakashi tied her to a pole and gave her another chance. After emphasizing the value of teamwork, he ordered him to refrain from feeding Sakura. Could you really be more obvious? It goes without saying that Sasuke fed her. After eating something, she might even be useful. Even so, Sasuke shuddered at the idea of having to devise a plan against a bloody Jonin with just Sakura and himself. Ultimately, Sakura only needed to eat something in order to graduate. What a fantastic and trustworthy test. His team's sole advantage was that it was the only one with 2 genins rather than 3. Naruto Uzumaki was given a place. Fortunately, the idiot was no longer there, so Sasuke didn't have to endure being held back by another teammate. Thank you very much. Sakura was more than sufficient. Sasuke had undoubtedly heard the directive to refrain from fighting Uzumaki. An additional indication that the elderly Hokage was becoming elderly. Come on. Sasuke had lost count of the number of times they had fought. Uzumaki had also never prevailed. Not once at all. It is evident that Sasuke could forcefully bring him back if he so desired. However, returning Uzumaki to Konoha was the last thing Sasuke desired. Because the fool would actually be a member of Team 7. It would be better if Uzumaki remained where he had fled to. Sasuke, however, would not have objected to the idiots taking the scroll. According to rumors, it had some extremely potent ninjutsus. Oh well, it didn't make much difference. Uzumaki was undoubtedly long dead, and the scroll has probably already been located. It must have been kept by the person who discovered it. Sasuke couldn't really hold that individual responsible. He most likely would have followed suit. After all, it shouldn't matter who owned the scroll as long as Konoha gained something from it. Regarding Uzumaki, well, Sasuke had a decent memory of his abilities. Or perhaps more accurately, his lack of it. Clown Uzumaki consistently received the lowest score on all tests. He was the only one who failed the initial academy graduation exam. In fact, Sasuke couldn't understand why the Hokage insisted on giving that fool a spot on any team. Well, whatever, it didn't make much difference. After all, a deceased person cannot be a member of a team. Additionally, Team 7 would remain a 3-man squad after Uzumaki's death. After that disastrous test, Sasuke truly believed that things couldn't possibly get any worse, for the simple reason that it was not physically feasible. Then the D ranks arrived. The person who called those missions ought to be imprisoned. Catching this damn cat, walking dogs, and painting fences. Those were assignments for misbehaving academy pupils. However, they were definitely not missions. Furthermore, they were not worth his time at all. Sadly, Team 7 was forced to perform those D ranks. He ended up doing all the work himself because Sakura was unable to help and Kakashi didn't want to. Fantastic. Going from being the best student to doing pointless manual labor after graduation. It was extremely annoying. He had requested additional missions, but once more, the Hokage refused to listen to logic. The civilian council was incompetent, and the ninja council showed no concern. Because Team 7 was smaller than typical teams, he would probably be stuck with D ranks for even longer than others. Because they had to make up for that one person, they had to be stronger individually before taking a C rank. Sasuke believed that he needed to make amends for 2 people, not just 1. Sakura didn't contribute to any missions, after all. And he didn't believe that would change in the near future. Sasuke had relied on his village and his teachers to help him become strong enough to exact revenge after losing his family. However, now, instead, Konoha appeared to be holding him back. Sasuke would need to develop his strength on his own. His back was pressed against cool air, as though to persuade him more. Notwithstanding the fact that his present breasts nearly tore his clothes, Naruto inhaled deeply. The stars in the sky were dazzling, and it was still in the middle of the night. The night was serene, quiet, and almost holy. As long as you didn't pay attention to the pathetic sobbing. Naturally, Naruto couldn't overlook such a thing. Oddly enough, the idea of assisting others made him feel a little more at ease. Right now, other people's problems seemed so much simpler. He located the source of the noise after taking a few steps. A girl about his age screamed uncontrollably and cowered behind a tree. Naruto sat next to her, unsure of what else to do, and inquired as to what was wrong. What are you doing here? And who are you? Do you have any idea how late it is? You should have been in bed hours ago, the girl said, startled. Hey, so should you, anyway. I couldn't sleep and went for a walk to clear my head. What about you? She reluctantly replied, oh, well, it's nothing, as she wiped away her tears. Okay. But if you want somebody to talk to. Thanks. Though I don't think you can help me all that much. Unless you have a good rapport with the people in the palace. Haha, yeah, as if I would be that lucky. With a hint of suspicion, Naruto said, to be honest, I know a few people there. Why? What do you need from them? Really? Wow. Who do you know? And how well? Maybe you can really help me after all. Why? What do you need to know it for? And who exactly are you? Naruto was more cautious than sorry following Gigi's betrayal. Oh, sorry. I'm Akira Fushigi. And I need to know more about the prince. Though I would be grateful for information on Queen Sari and her husband too. As for the reason. Well, I need to become one of the prince's wives. Incredulously, Naruto repeated, you need to become one of the prince's wives? Akira let out a sigh. It's complicated, and you could give me your name too, you know. Huh, oh, it's Nanako. He got back up almost immediately. So why don't you explain to me why you actually need to marry? You're just as young as I am. Of course, Naruto had to marry as well. Even more than once. Only if he was willing to follow his family's plans. Which at the moment wasn't very likely. In any case, he didn't think Akira had the same motive. You're not from here, Nanako-chan? I guess I'll have to start at the beginning. Okay, so there are a lot of clans in Diamond, big and small. But only 3 are major, or at least there used to be 3. A major clan is essentially a clan that has the power and potential to rule Diamond in the event that the royal family is harmed. The only major clans in Diamond are the Kin clan and the Momiji clan, but there was once a Fushigi clan. Nobody could have predicted that the royal line would ever be in danger, and even when the princess fled, the people merely laughed and assumed she would return soon enough. As a small family, the queen, the king, and their daughter Carrie were all very strong and healthy, so everyone assumed Carrie Sama would have some more children, and that was that. I can understand the opinions that were prevalent at the time, such as, let her have some fun, maybe the princess will even bring back a husband, and seeing the world will help her rule with wisdom and kindness. Princess Carrie was, from what I've heard, extremely strong, and she even left a letter stating that she would return before turning 30. However, when Carrie Sama's 30th birthday arrived without warning and the princess vanished, some became concerned because Queen Sari was already past childbearing age and had no other heir. My clan also began to die at that time, but we didn't realize it at first because there was always a chance that some members wouldn't return from a mission. Eventually, we realized that we had lost a lot more members than usual, but we just thought we had experienced a period of bad luck. It was unfortunate, but nothing more or less, and the country as a whole had terrible luck at the time. It wasn't until our clan was reduced to about 20 members that we realized the majority of our losses occurred during missions where another team member was from the Kin clan, but we had already lost too many to have an impact on team compositions. Of course, we did consider foul play at one point, but we didn't know who, much less had any proof. It's frustrating that we still lack proof, even though the only people left are our clan head, who is too old for missions, and those who are too young for missions, which includes my 3 cousins and me. I need the prince to fall in love with me, even if he's a spoiled brat, because my family needs the royal family's protection. Please help me. Wait. Spoiled brat? The prince is the future king of Diamond and the only male known to have the nature bloodline, which alone would give anyone a better than you attitude. However, he also had to be raised somewhere else, and everyone would try to win his favor and grant all of his wishes, which would have made him even more conceited. If he had been raised here with his own family, he would have likely at least occasionally been tormented with real morals. What do you expect? I doubt he can even dress himself without assistance, and if he's anything like the nobles I know, he'll start screaming the moment he doesn't get his wish or sobbing in agony if a little bee stings him. Good grief. And I'll have to flirt with him. I feel like throwing up just thinking about it. As it is, the prince probably never had to follow a single rule in his entire life. Actually, Akira-chan, I know a bit about the prince and the way he grew up, and believe me, there weren't many people who wanted his favor, or grant his wishes. In fact, most didn't seem to know he was related to the queen. Anyway, I'll help you. What do you want to know? Really? Thanks a million. So what do you think the prince likes in girls? What does he hate? What can I do to get his attention? Well, I don't have. I don't think Prince Naruto has a particular type. But he really hates people who are arrogant, mean to others or tell lies. But how to get his attention? I don't know. Wow. You already told me far more than I expected. Maybe he really isn't that spoiled, if he doesn't like arrogant people. You actually know the prince personally, right? Are you also involved in this madness of matchmaking with him, Nanako-chan? Naruto couldn't help but smile weakly as he thought about Haruhi-chan, Gigi, and the upcoming fiancés once more. Well, yeah, kind of. Haha. Okay. Oh, right. Why don't you tell me why you came here? It is after all the middle of the night. To sidestep the problem, Naruto said, it's complicated. Akira pouted, come on, Nanako-chan, I told you my trouble too. He sighed and resisted. I can't even trust my own family because I have a problem with my grandparents. Grandpa hurt one of my friends, and Grandma kept his secret even though he had likely broken the law. In addition, his true target was me. Additionally, I only recently discovered that almost everything I had been told about my dream was false. I had dreamed since I was 4 years old that I would be a great leader, but everything I was told about it was a complete lie, so even if I still wanted to be that leader, I couldn't go back there because I simply don't know what to do anymore. Say, Nanako-chan, were those lies the reason for your dream? Or did you ask about being a leader and then got lied to? I mean, if you already had that dream before ever hearing those lies, then it shouldn't matter, right? At least for your dream. Naruto thought about that. When did the desire to become Hokage begin? And why? He had nearly forgotten because it had been so long ago. That adorable young girl sprinted straight by him, weeping. In those days, she must have been about his age. Not yet, not even in the academy. Curious, Naruto wanted to console her and perhaps even become friends. She appeared to be twice as heartbroken and lonely as he was. Naruto was able to follow her, though it was a little challenging. However, she unexpectedly encountered some older boys. Literally. After they were all knocked down, the girl apologized right away. For those boys, though, it was insufficient. Even though the girl was clearly at least 2 years younger than them and already sincerely sorry, 3 boys had the audacity to bully her. Naruto couldn't allow that to occur, of course. Telling those guys to get lost, he jumped in. Ultimately, all he received was a thrashing from those 3 older children. However, he was accustomed to much worse. Additionally, the young girl appeared to have escaped. She was quick, In fact, he wanted to be friends with her for that reason. It would have been amazing to play tag. Naruto had been depressed after that fight. Sometimes getting beat up did that to you. Soon after, though, he made a self-promise to become the strongest person on the planet. He might have been able to talk to the attractive girl and become her friend if he had been strong enough to beat those guys up. He wished to make friends and protect good people. His ambition to become the greatest and most powerful leader in history began with that. He later believed that the Hokage would make a great leader. His ambition to become the greatest Hokage in history was suddenly realized. Well, it was now impossible to become a Hokage of any kind, good or bad. However, his initial goal of becoming the world's greatest and strongest leader was perhaps more feasible than ever in Konoha. Naruto was still able to maintain that dream. Gran would definitely not mind his original dream because she at least wanted to make him a good king for Diamond. She even asserted that he had a responsibility to defend his people, or will eventually be. Regarding Gigi, well, Naruto lost the ability to care for him after the horny Haruhi incident. Instead of becoming a Hokage, Naruto will simply need to become the greatest King Diamond has ever had. Yes, he ought to have done that. For a moment, he wondered what had happened to the young girl from that time. He hadn't thought of her in a long time, but it wasn't the first time. Her short dark hair, pale face, and nearly white eyes were still in his memory. Hold on, Hyuga's eyes had been there. Since that color wasn't at all common, he was certain of it. Hinata, however, had them. She had short dark hair and a pale face. And she shared the girl from back then's shyness and susceptibility to depression. However, was it even feasible? There must have been plenty of girls his age, surely. But did any of the other girls have eyes like that? No, however, it's possible that the girl from that time never saw him again. It might have happened if she had attended a civilian school. However, that also didn't make sense. It was clear that she had been dressed for training. She must have accompanied him to the academy. There were only two individuals with those eyes. One was Hinata, and the other was a jerk from the year above them. That explained why she found him so appealing. She must also recall him. Nanako, or Naruto, grinned at Akira. You're right, I guess. I can still become the best and strongest leader. And have a lot of friends. Thanks a million, Akira. Chan. Hi, you're welcome. Your dream sure is impressive. And you're such a nice girl to boot. We could be friends, well, only if you want to, of course. Friends? There had never been anyone who wanted to be his friend. You mean it? Sure, let's be best friends forever. Yeah, you know, we're a really good team, and we could help each other to get the prince's attention. Maybe even his love. Please, let's work together to become princesses. Akira looked at her with excitement. Sure thing. Friends stick together after all. Really? Great. You have no idea what a relief it is to hear that. I was so scared about what could happen. And that I would make a fool of myself next term. Now we can. Hey, look, a shooting star. Fast. Make a wish. Naruto noticed a stunning, brilliant streak across the sky when he looked up at the stars. He made his wish while closing his eyes. The first star I see tonight is bright and shining, and I hope that I will be granted my wish tonight. I'd like lots of pals. Who appreciate me not only for my title but also for who I am. Who I can trust and who trust me. Naruto opened his eyes after granting his wish. There were more stars in the sky than there were people running around in Konoha, and they were staring up at it. The sky was already becoming a bit brighter on the eastern horizon. Soon the sun would rise. The night was nearly over somehow. Naruto's doubts had somehow been carried away by it. Did Nanako or Naruto smile at his or her new acquaintance? Those girls who had played with him when he first got to Titan felt different in some way. Somehow, deeper, stronger. Together, they had plans. Additionally, it didn't feel like his girls, the guards who have been by his side from the day they first met until tonight. And only as a result of his insistence. He was recognized as the prince by his guards. Furthermore, they were essentially powerless to decide whether or not to stay with him. In a way, he was their real objective. Regardless of how kind or cruel they were to one another. However, Akira was a friend of Nanako's. Not that of Prince Naruto. Without any encouragement, she wanted to be his friend. And compared to spending time with Kiba and the others in Konoha, it felt even more alien. They had only put up with him somehow. And that, hardly at all. They just didn't bother to chase him away, even though they didn't want him around. They were never really friends. No, Akira, however, was a true friend. It was his first. Akira interrupted his thoughts by saying, you know, the sun will be up shortly. Going to bed now won't help much. How about we go to the mountaintop and watch the sunrise? Yeah, sure. But we should probably go back afterwards, before our families notice that we're gone. They headed uphill, chatting about this and that. As soon as they arrived at the summit, Naruto declared this to be his new favorite spot. It was a breathtaking view. The palace was nearby, and the mountain was encircled by trees. The city, with its innumerable homes and intricate system of streets, was just off in the distance. Both of them stood silently. Both of them are content with the quiet, peaceful, and present company. The view was even more breathtaking when the sun rose, casting a warm glow over everything. Waking up a new day and starting over. It was encouraging as well as somewhat humbling. And telling Akira about this felt strangely appropriate. Following some time, Akira invited Nanako to meet again at 9 p.m. On the mountaintop tomorrow. Today. Naturally, Nanako was unable to agree quickly enough. They soon split up. To return home in secret, ideally unnoticed. Naruto concluded that this walk had been very beneficial as he made his way through the basement back to his own room. Gigi and the fact that he had to exercise caution when putting his trust in other people might not have mattered. It cleared his mind, though. And even made his heart sing. He may not be able to trust his own family, but he could still chase his dream and make this place his home. And find friends. He couldn't wait for tonight, they had plans to make. And Naruto was a great planner. It sort of came with pulling so many pranks. Suddenly, he remembered what exactly these plans were going to be about. Did he just, in the heat of the moment, actually agree to help someone to become the girlfriend of himself? Oh, shit. But he had said he would help her, he couldn't take it back. Naruto would need to come up with a plan. However, that might have to wait. Initially, he needed to finish this day. Better with a little sleep.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.